You want to hold for 2 minutes and I'll run a couple more off? Would you like to say? No? Okay. We're going.
Well, I think just, I don't think it's lack of interest. I just think sometimes it's up for it is.
In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, this is a regular scheduled meeting pursuant to a resolution adopted on January 2nd, 2018, with a meeting notice published in the Hunterdon County Democrat issue of January 11, 2018. Copy of the agenda for this meeting was forwarded to the Hunterdon County Democrat, Times of Trenton, Star Ledger, Courier News, posted on the bulletin board, filed in the clerk's office on October 9th, 2018.
Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Terry, are there any changes to be done?
Few items of correspondence. The October 10th notice from PSE&G. They're having public hearings on rate increases. Ask for a copy. There's a October 4th notice from Hunterdon County Soil Conservation District for Block 31, Lot 601. Notices to stop the work order. Ask for copy. Also, the New Jersey League of Municipalities magazine for November. And then under the CFO report, there's an additional resolution for a driveway bond for Block 30, Lot 801. That's in your packet. Under standing committees, there'll be an update on trucks as Environmental Commission update. And just to let you know, both the minutes for September 13th and September 20th will be received for the next meeting.
Okay, first of all, welcome. Thank you all for coming. It's a big crowd. We don't have enough agendas printing, so if anyone insists on having one, we can have some made at a break. We take a break. Some announcements. There is a recycling container in the municipal lobby for plastics collection for Trex. The township is trying to collect 500 pounds or more of specific plastics to acquire a bench for a township maintained property. The website for more information. Hunterdon County dates of interest. The Hazardous Waste Day, November 17th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Electronics Waste Recycling Day, November 10th from 9 to 1 p.m., 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., and Intra-Shred Day, November 3rd from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. And that is shredding documents for anyone who's interested. All events take place at the county complex on Route 12. See the East Amwell website for more information. Clausen House, operating as the East Amwell Museum, is now open for general public with hours on Saturday and Sunday from 1 to 4 p.m. North New Jersey visiting nurses will hold a flu vaccine clinic at East Amwell Township Building on Wednesday, October 17th from 1 to 2:30 p.m. The cost for each vaccine is $25, and again, more information is on the website. The South County Library will celebrate its relocation to East Amwell. The grand opening will be Saturday, October 20th at 10 a.m., and the public is welcome. East Amwell will launch its new website on Thursday, October 25th, with a party at the Municipal Building beginning at 6:30 p.m. General Election Day is Tuesday, November 6th, with all East Amwell polls located in this municipal building. Polls are open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., and the sample ballot is available on the website. Yes.
There's a backlog for some reason. I don't know why nothing's been posted, but it will be posted. I sent another message, so it's getting there. But nothing says the ballots.
Oh, okay. So the ballot will be posted soon. Free radon kits are available to residents at the Hunterdon County Health Department at the County Complex Building 1 office location from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. daily. Call 908-788-1351 for details. Okay, item 5, update from the CFO. Margaret, you have an update?
Pass out the current standing of the budget right now. So far, everything's still good. No one's gone over budget yet. I mean, we are gonna be transferring for a couple departments. They will eventually, but considering we're already into October, that's actually pretty good.
So at this point, do you foresee any risk of being over budget?
Over the total grant?
Yeah.
Oh, no,
Okay.
absolutely not. Just individual lines individual budgets might have some issues. I know planning board's gonna go over. I know DCRP has to get some more money in there, but, I don't see anything drastic or anything like that. I think everything's pretty well, going pretty well right now.
Okay, thank you.
Again, I did wanna mention, last time I mentioned about the animal control account, because of the contract and the increased charges that we were gonna run out of money. I want to remind you that if one of the options was to increase the fees, you would have to do that in an ordinance, and to have that information ready for next year, we would have to introduce next meeting. So if that's, and there is, Pam had given me something from the state, that there is a cap on how high you can go.
How close are we to the cap?
Right now, you charge 12 for neutered and 15 for unneutered. I think the cap is 21.
For both?
I think for the cap is 21 for the total fee, so my guess would be that you'd have to be, you could only charge, say, 18 for neutered and 21 for unneutered. That would be the highest you would go up.
Okay.
Is there a fee in your estimate that would break even? That would get us to where,
You would, from where we are, I would say you would have to bring it up $4 or $5.
$4 to $5?
Terry, the folks in the back can't hear. Can you maybe turn up the microphones?
Somebody must have changed those buttons again.
Are the microphones still controlled from there, or is Matt controlling them?
Sounds controlled.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay. We'll try to speak louder.
It's very hard to do. So
No
maybe the
microphone.
microphone that I had, because I have to put the camera here. I'll sign language.
Okay, so it sounds like a $4 to $5 increase would get us to break even under our current agreement with the animal control. I saw something between last meeting that there might be another option. Did I see that correctly, that there was another, that Raritan was using another option?
Oh, I had tried to tell you at the last meeting that I had started doing, I know what you're talking about, animal control solutions that came in as an interest party, but I will mention that when I was doing the survey with the other clerks, they were much more than what we were
Oh,
saying.
okay.
But, that's it.
Okay.
All right, I have two resolutions. First resolution is to cancel unexpended balances in 2 escrows. It's actually a correction, because I had the wrong number in last month's. And then when I went to do it, I realized that there was an issue.
So there's 2 resolutions in the packet?
The one packet has the resolution for the cancellation, and
Right.
the new one that's loose, that's in the folder today, is the driveway one that just came in.
Move the approval of these 2 resolutions.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any discussion? Okay. So these resolutions are approved. Margaret, I don't know if you're prepared for it, but I had asked you to have some information regarding
The chip sealing?
the chip sealing, yeah, did you?
Right now, what you have in the capital budget is that you do have an ordinance for $50,000 that included chip sealing. That was a 2018 ordinance. That is the only thing we have specifically dedicated just for that. Other capital ordinances we have the large various road improvements, which was the Zion Road project in Lindbergh and Lindenville. Depending on how much we're gonna continue to do, there may be a little bit of money in there, but nothing significant. I mean, right now I have a balance of about $20,000 and that's unencumbered. And I don't know if there's anything else still brewing on that. The other capital ordinance is for subgrade for various roads, but that's not really available for chip sealing. That's what Jason uses just to make the repairs. So honestly, that's all we have.
Okay. And did you, or you may not have, but if you could, look into the iBank that was
I
discussed?
did actually, I mean, there isn't a lot of information on that. There's no local finance notice coming out on that, other than reading an article or two on it and looking on the website. I mean, it's a lower interest loan.
Yeah.
I mean, I was kinda hoping that we weren't gonna go that way. I was hoping to do the pay as we go.
Yeah, well, my understanding is it's lower interest than bonds and there's no
Yes,
soft
it
costs.
is. Yeah,
There's no
if the
soft-
interest rate they're giving is true, because they
Right.
said it was like between 1.25% and 1.5%. That is definitely lower.
Okay. So it is an option if we wanted to take on a lot more than we're normally currently doing.
Yeah, I mean, you've gotta keep in mind that, because we did the bond this year, we were gonna have a drop off, but we phased this in so that basically our bond payments are gonna stay
Right.
basically the same. The bond payment went down for next year, down 10,000, but unfortunately the interest went up
Okay.
13, so,
Yeah, so it's about an offset.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Anything else, Margaret?
Well, policy manual changes are under mine, but I guess that's, for Terry.
Yeah, that's next on the
One was
agenda.
the benefits resolution, that's why I left in there, the other one was for the insurance, so there's two separate parts of it. Remember, one was for the benefits
Yeah.
resolution. That pertained to employee leave, that was sections, 3.1 through 3.10, that Kevin and David had reviewed. And then the other part was sections 1.1 through 5.4 were parts for the attorney to sign off on
Right.
as part of our risk management. So,
So that's item C on the agenda. Do we want to take that now? Are there any other questions for Margaret at this point on the financials? Before we move on? Okay, so on the policy changes, we deferred that to this meeting to take a thorough read. I'm just going to assume everyone's read them. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
I have a question on 2.24. It seems like it begins with an incomplete sentence. I'm not quite sure where the first paragraph begins. The first 4 lines have been deleted, and then it seems to start in the middle of the sentence.
There was one that carried over from the previous page. Is that, as I was reading it,
Oh, maybe that's,
yeah, there's that sort
oh,
of,
right.
there's a
right.
forced header
Yeah,
between them.
okay, right, got it, thanks.
Okay. Yeah. Any other comments? No. Do we need a resolution on this? or-
we need two separate resolutions. One is for the benefits resolution and one is for the insurance, so we make two separate, just approve or if you so desire. We've always, when we've updated the policy manual, we've always done it by resolution and then
Okay.
that policy manual looks for that.
So they have a motion to approve, to accept the changes as modified?
I'll move such motion.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any noes? Okay. Terry, so what I'd like to do is, now that their policy is to make sure all the employees get that update
They do.
and
That's all about it, but once
Okay.
we update it, we give it to the employees.
okay. I'd like an affirmative statement from them that they've read it.
Okay, usually ask them to sign off on
Okay,
a piece
great.
of paper that they've obtained. We'd like them to say that they read it. and-
Yeah. There's a
Okay.
significant amount of changes, so I think it's important that the employees read it so they understand what's changed. Okay. Okay, item 6 is a special discussion and update from Comcast. Rob Clifton, the Director of Government Affairs, is here.
Hello, Mayor, how are you?
Hi, Rob. How you doing?
I have no formal report tonight, so I will just answer any questions that the committee or the public have for me.
Okay. Anyone in the committee have any questions for
anything this time
Comcast?
around,
Okay. Does anyone in the public have any questions for Comcast? I don't see any.
All right.
Thank you for coming.
My pleasure, as always.
At least the Eagles are televised tonight, but that's because of the Giants. Okay, next up is item B, a special presentation by Steve Sousa of Princeton Hydro. This is an update on the Stormwater 319H grant. This is a carryover from our last meeting, so we wanted to hear more details.
Good evening, Mayor.
Hi, Steve, how are you?
Good. Before we begin, I'm going to make a comment to the committee as a resident of East Family. I've lived here since 1982. I wasn't present at last month's meeting, and Mr. Wolf, you made a number of disparaging, untrue, totally false comments about me. If I was sitting in your position right now, I'd be issuing me an apology. I don't know anything about your character, but that would be my character. First off, I'm not a member of the EADA. Never have been. Never contributed to the EADA. Never contributed to any political party. Never attended an EDA function. So where you got your information, which you said was from some kind of reputable source, you better go back and check your source and check your facts. If you're as astute as you think you are, you would have checked these forms that as a company, we need to file with this town every year. And you would see that we have never made a political contribution. You would have taken time to look at the business entity form that we need to file with the state every year. And you would see that we've never made any political contribution to any political party. And that's statewide. So township or statewide. So where you got your facts from, I don't know. Secondly, you have a lot of nerve to bring my wife's name up at a meeting. That woman is the most apolitical person in the world. She served on the planning board for 6 months. She was approached by Pat Krieger, bless her soul, who's my neighbor. We've lived in the town since '82. She was asked to serve on the planning board because there was a special study that was being conducted of the village. I encouraged her to do that, to give back to the town. Although she's been a soccer mom, she's been a Little League mom, and headed up the Girl Scout and, Girl Scouts here in the town for years, CCD and all the rest of that stuff. She served on the planning board for about 6 months. We were caring for her ailing father, who was in his late 80s at the time. And it got to a point, even with just being on that one committee, that subcommittee, it was just too much, and she resigned after about 6 months. So you have a lot of nerve bringing her name up at a meeting that had nothing at all to do with her. So I take a lot of exception to that. And like I said, if I was sitting in your position, I'd be issuing an apology right at this point in time. So you wanted me to come here before the town under oath. That was your words. So I'm here. So before we get started on the grant, if any of you have anything else to ask of me about involvement with EADA or any of that, feel free. Tim, you came and spoke to me when you were running for mayor. I gave you a lot of time. I listened to you intently. If you all had the ability to check my voting records, you'd see that I'd vote for the person, not for the party. And so I'll leave it at that. So here we are. I don't know if you have anything to say, but I'll give you the opportunity to say something although you didn't give me the opportunity the last month to say anything.
You weren't here.
Yeah, no kidding, I wasn't here. I would have been here if I could, but we had a conflict, and I would have preferred to be here other than as PPAC, but I had to be there.
Okay, but I can't give you the opportunity to say anything if you're not here.
Well, and then you shouldn't have taken the opportunity to make these disparaging comments, if I'm not here, to answer something that has absolutely nothing to do with the grant. Zero. Absolutely nothing.
It has plenty to do with the grant, and I'm happy to get into that, but I'd like you to finish your presentation.
It's your chance to apologize.
Yes, apologize.
No,
It's your
I
chance.
let him finish his presentation.
Okay. We have a person speaking here to the Township Committee. It's not open to the public, so please keep your comments to a minimum. Appreciate it.
Really hard to hear everything.
Okay, I said we're not open to the public. Okay.
Okay, so that's all I have to say about that. As far as the grant is concerned, I will admit we made a mistake. I went through all the records. Originally, when I wrote that grant application for the township, it was for 48 months. It was signed and returned to DEP, and Margaret, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was 2 months after they sent the letter saying it's 36 months, not 48 months. I should have tracked that. I'll take full responsibility for that. Regardless, we have been in contact with DEP. We were in contact with DEP before we even realized that the grant had expired. As you know, DEP is ready to issue at least a 6-month extension on the grant, which, by the way, did not cost the town a dime.
Have we heard from DEP on the extension? I know we sent a letter.
No, I've been literally calling or emailing them 2-3 times a week.
That's a fine.
So, at this point, what I would suggest is, the township should reach out to the freeholders, particularly, John Lanza, because he has connections with the town. He's the town's judge, and then also with our representatives for this district, to put some pressure on DEP to issue the 1-year extension.
Well, it was a 6-month extension.
Well, we're asking for a full 1 year so that we can get all of the work done.
Did the letter say 6 months or a year?
The letter said 6 months
Yeah.
because that's all that they had instructed us to file for.
Yeah.
But we've been pushing for a full year because it makes no sense to go out and put plants in the ground in December.
Right, I agree. That's why I
Well, right,
suggested.
We had that discussion. yes.
Right.
Okay.
But DEP, the way they're issuing extensions is in 6-month increments. So at this point in time, what they have told us, and this is as of yesterday, that the 6-month extension will more than likely get approved. It's already worked, it's all the way the food chain to Bruce Friedman. And they're working on the additional 6 months. But I would encourage the town through our legislators, Assembly and Senate, Senator, to put some additional pressure, and through the freeholders as well. It's a good.
I'm confused, because I thought a minute ago you said we got a 6-month extension, and now it sounds like we don't have any extension. And I thought you said a few minutes ago that they weren't returning your call. Then you're saying you've been speaking
No,
with them.
I didn't
So
say they weren't returning my
I don't
call.
know where we are. Do we have a 6-month
Don't
extension?
put words in
or
my
don't we?
mouth. What I said is that we have been working with DEP, and I was asked, have we heard back from DEP about the 6-month extension? And what I was told specifically by Paul Demara, our project manager, and then an email that was also received from his supervisor, Jay Springer, was that the 6-month extension had been signed by them and had worked its way up to Bruce Friedman, their boss, and was more than likely going to be approved.
So why should we be putting pressure on them if our extension is more than likely to be approved? Is
Because
it
we
going to
want a
backfire?
1-year extension. We want a full 1 year,
The 6-month extension goes through what date, the end of the year, or?
yes. It's not 6 months from today. It's not 6 months from when they say okay. It's 6 months from July.
So if we don't get the 1 year, we basically lost the rest of the grant money, because as a practical matter, we can't deploy it by year end.
Yes and no. What I already spoke to DEP about in writing was that we would purchase all of the plant material that's needed for the swale upgrades, for the other upgrades that Jason and I had looked at, that Jason asked that some additional plantings be put in, that we would purchase all the plant material with the grant money, and it would be installed at a later date.
So then we will lose most of the grant money, because it looks like we have $217,000 left under the grant as of June 30th, 2018. The plants aren't going to cost, I assume, anything close to $217,000. We're probably talking about a relatively small percentage of the 217. So if we don't get the extension, we will lose most of the grant money, correct?
You're not going to lose the money, it'll go back to DEP, and as it stands anyhow, of the 200,000, we're not going to spend probably half of that with these next two projects.
You're sparring with me and not answering my question. My question is simple. If we
We're not
don't
gonna, you
deploy
asked
the
me if
money
we're
by
going
the
to lose
end
it.
of the
We're not
year,
losing the money.
well, we are. If we're not going to be able to deploy it, then we're losing it. I don't know how you're going to debate that with me. Either we can use it or we can't.
You want
If
to
you're
get into
telling
the
me we can
semantics? I'm telling you, you're going to give it back to them.
Okay, I got it, I see where this is going, fine.
So you can
say we're
take it
going to
wherever
give
you want to
back,
go.
We're going to lose that money.
You want me to say we're going to lose it for whatever reason? We're going to lose it, okay? The money is there to be spent. We're trying to spend the money. We're not trying to spend it frivolously either.
Correct, so
The
you
money
can
that
spend it
was,
on,
the money that was assessed, the money that was anticipated for this grant, okay, is based on estimates. And it's not every grant that you spend every single dime. There's plenty of grants that we conduct that we come in well under budget, and the money goes back to DEP. It's just a fact of the matter.
but we will not have the money to do the project that we were considering doing in the ice skating.
That's true. That is true.
Okay,
And that's why I'm saying, as Princeton Hydro has over the past 45 days, have been pushing DEP to give us the full year extension so we can complete the project in totality.
So I'm just a little confused on the letter that we finally sent asked for a 6-month extension, which would have been from July,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
But now, Steve, you're saying we're asking for a 1 year. How are we doing that? I didn't send another letter asking for a year.
Now, we'll get the 6-month approval, and then we'll ask for another 6 months on top of that. So once that first 6 month is issued, then we'll ask for another 6 months immediately.
So let's say that's issued this month. Let's say it's imminent, we get a letter, we got it. It's only good till the end of this year.
Correct.
Right? So we're essentially going to ask for another 6 months.
Correct.
Right, so we're essentially pushing for that anticipation.
Does that happen frequently, that they'll just grant another 6 months?
Well, in the past, they would issue 1 year and 2 year extensions. But now, they're not.
Which is why we asked for 6 months, because it's a lot more difficult to get a direct on paper 1
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, you and I talk, and
Right,
I was
yes.
uncomfortable about asking for less than we needed, because I said the reality is it's going to take us through the summer.
And I will tell you, if we get just 6 months, we're not going to spend money, grant money, preparing plans for a project that's not going to be completed either.
Yeah.
So, that money will go back as well. I'm not going to write up and spend a bunch of money developing plans and specs, knowing that, that project is not going to be implemented. Unless you direct me to do so, then we'll do it, but.
And I believe that was something that the board was concerned with
Yeah.
with my meeting, when it was just me.
Well, I think
That
that
was
was
some
the
of your
essence
concern.
of my concern, was that
Right.
we might get enough funding to do the design work and then not be able to actually implement. And that was where I was concerned.
What could actually be done by the end of the year if we don't get the extra 6 months?
Well, if they gave us the approval tomorrow, we could purchase all the plant material, and we could actually put we could put those plants in the ground. We're still within the growing season. So we could do that.
So that'd be for the rain gardens then?
It'd be for the rain gardens, the swale. When I walked the park with Jason, he had identified specific portions of the, particularly of the swale, and then we could get the plant material that we had planned to put in the upper basin, which would, the Rutgers Basin, the one that's closest to the tennis courts. We could get all that plant material as well and get that installed.
And it would survive?
It would survive, as long as we got it in before the first frost. That's what I'm saying. If we got an approval tomorrow, we could do it.
Let's
And that's
just,
why I've put DEP on notice that if we do get the 6 months, we're gonna purchase all the plant material and get that into the ground.
so let's just go through the mechanics of that. Do you need an action of the township committee?
At this point, no, because, what DEP has told us is file for the 6 months, get the 6 months, and then file for another 6 months.
But what I'm saying, do you need an action from us? If we got the approval tomorrow, do you need an action from us in order to authorize getting plants?
I think that's something that I'd have to discuss with Margaret. We would have to look at what the total expenditure is and how much, if that is below what needs to be formally bid.
Yeah. Okay.
But the plant material is not gonna be that much. I would estimate that it's not gonna be more than about $8,000. So it would be something that we'd have to get multiple quotes on, but it's
Yeah.
not something that would have to be bid.
Who would actually do that work, if that's the part that gets done? Would that be volunteers again?
We could use volunteers, and we could do it with Princeton Hydro labor.
Steve, can I just ask a general question on the original grant? So there were 3 main projects that were proposed, the Clausen Park stormwater improvements, the East Amwell School rain garden, and the municipal complex stormwater improvements. Were all of those completed?
Now, the Clausen Park was the primary project site. If you recall, I came in to pitch a project at the school, and there was a discussion about that project being done on Board of Education property and not township property, and was directed to scrap that project. So that was scrapped. The project that was proposed for behind the municipal building on the ball fields, I was out there with Jason on multiple occasions looking at that. It involves a lot of DEP permits, and the last time I was out there with him, which was right after, almost a couple of days after the time, when I was here back in September, and I said in order for us to accomplish it, we would have to literally move the backstop and make the whole field much smaller in order to be able to work out of the riparian corridor, and also to collect and manage the stormwater that's coming off of that area properly. And he said that's a no-go, to move the backstop and make that field smaller. But I would say the primary stumbling block with that project is really the permits. That would trigger a DEP individual permit, which, under wetlands, and what's almost crazy about that is that you're doing environmental improvements, but you would have to you'd have to provide mitigation for the improvements. So regardless if it was East Amwell or whatever client, I would tell them to avoid that, because there's no sense mitigating on an environmental improvement project. But we wouldn't have had the time. It would have taken probably 9 months or more to get those permits. It's typically at least 120 days for a simple permit.
Okay, so back to your original email, I think it was what, the 3A and B? I can't recall, when you lay out the options, somewhere no-go, that's what we're really talking about here, is those last.
Right, and we also looked at, doing some improvements to the swale that is along 202, 31, but that is DOT property, so that was a no-go. I discussed with Jason when we did our last site walk to put in some pervious pavement over the parking stalls that were along that building that used to be the library extension. But that was going to be too disruptive, to the whole parking lot, and we would still have to drain out to the swale. So that would have involved DOT approvals. And basically ended up over at the park, and he said if there's anything he can do about the, what should have been the skating rink, because he can't maintain that, he can't mow it, and he said that would be a big help. So that's why we went with that project. And he also asked that we'd make some improvements to the big basin, the Rutgers Basin, to make it look more like the other one. So again, I took my cues from Jason, but did tell him that from an engineering standpoint, those were all doable projects.
Okay.
And well within the money that still remained in the grant.
So it seems we really have no action other than waiting for,
Unfortunately.
would you say? I mean,
I
that's the
sent
next
another
step.
email to DEP today at noontime saying we have a meeting, reminding them that we had a meeting this evening. They had email and a phone conversation yesterday with DEP, again reminding them that we had a meeting tonight with the town. It would not look good either for DEP or Princeton Hydro to go into the meeting without some resolution.
Mhm.
But here we are.
Okay.
Steve, could I ask you about the status of the two new rain gardens? What is your evaluation of their current condition? Do they look,
Well, functionally, they're functioning, perfectly. I mean,
Okay.
they don't, there's no standing water in them, they drain the way it's supposed to drain. Our concern there was that there are some invasives in there. And that was part of the, from an aesthetic standpoint, one wouldn't look at it and think that they were invasives, but there's some crown vetch that's growing in there, and that should be removed. But it's,
so they're functioning properly?
they are functioning properly.
And they just need the planting to be upgraded?
Right.
And that's what we would do with the remaining money, is that the idea?
That would be a small portion of it,
Yeah, okay.
small portion of it, of the additional planting. Jason wanted some additional planting done in the swale. When I'm referring to the bioswale, that's that feature, if you're walking along the path that is adjacent to what we refer to as the lower basin, or the basin, the northern basin. It's the swale that runs adjacent to that. And adding more plant material there. And then, like I said, within the upper basin, or the Rutgers Basin, adding more plant material in there that was more consistent with what we have in the other basin.
I think Jack answered this question last time, but just to confirm, so the water issue that we were having on Iron Horse Farm, Iron Horse Road with the person's basement, I guess, filling up with water, so that's been resolved, or has it?
Well, I don't know what's going on with their basement, to be quite honest with you, but in terms of the flooding that was occurring on their yard, if any of you have not been out to that site, essentially what was occurring is that you have two detention basins that basically drained just out on top of the pipeline. And there was no way for that water to go anywhere to get into a collection system. So essentially what it would do is pool up and then run into that person's backyard and then sit there. So that was resolved. Now, that wasn't resolved, that was resolved in part with grant money, but it was also resolved by Jason with Public Works by running an additional pipe and then connecting that pipe to the swale then that runs behind the properties on Iron Horse that then goes out to John Ringo. Okay. But by putting in the wildflower meadow over the pipeline, that resolved the problems with water sitting there. Now it can infiltrate. It was all compacted, so that has been uncompacted. And he doesn't have to mow there any longer. And then basically by contouring it, it allows whatever water does collect to eventually make its way over to the road into a pipe system, and then, so that person's yard is not flooding anymore. And additionally, we took some of the, as you know, any of you had gone out during construction, there was a lot of soil that had been excavated. Some of that stockpiled soil was used to create a berm along the property line, again, to deflect some of that runoff that was coming from the park over into the basin. It was never constructed correctly, so that water would not make it into the basin. So we put up a berm to direct that all into that lower basin.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I think just a general comment, Steve. I think, Jack, when we talked last time, maybe some additional options in the future, assuming the extensions fall into place. I think you brought up the meditation garden, but maybe some other options that, well, it might have some functionality that we could ultimately roll out to the residents and maybe see which of those might be the most favorable beyond just some of the immediate things. It was just a seed I wanted to plant on your creativity, just to see what else you might be able to come up with,
Right.
other than additional rain gardens, for example.
Yeah.
So,
The meditation garden,
Yeah.
It provides a different
yeah,
type of
I know.
site, a different type of feature to the site. Again, I've worked that all out with Jason. We can make those pathways out of permeable pavers, plant them with grass, make them 6 feet wide. He said that doesn't add to, he's got to be there with a mower anyhow, and he says that takes no time at all.
Okay.
And right now, we can't maintain it. So we worked that out, and however it looks,
Okay.
we have plenty, we've given the 1-year extension, we have plenty of time to work on the details.
So, I mean, you'll
of
have
that.
plenty of ideas. I mean, maybe we can just come up with some additional options
Yes.
as well, different layouts. And again, as I say, roll it out to the residents maybe and see which of those is the most interesting, if you're okay with that.
Right.
'Cause
We
again, you've been
could,
doing this a long time. I'm sure
Yeah.
there's even other ideas.
right, we could conduct a community charrette and let people have
Exactly.
recommendations. And as long as, I would say, is if we can focus on the park, because it's township-owned land,
It's
It's
an easy
accessible.
target that way. You
Right.
can execute quickly on it. Yeah,
right, it's in the scope, it was identified as, the primary project area.
I know.
We would be able to move that forward quickly.
Yeah. I still go down as saying I wanted the skating rink, just for the last comment. But again, some other functionality, but it was an interesting concept. But again, I'm charging you with coming up with some other
Yeah.
ideas, and we can just maybe, again, roll out some different options. I think it'd be
We
interesting.
would be open to that. I'll have to say that DP did respond favorably to that preliminary concept, because
good.
it's a type of
Sure.
design that could be implemented even in an urban area.
Yeah,
So it has, and it's consistent with the whole concept of green infrastructure and types of things that could be done
yeah, because
regardless
you've got some
of.
guidelines you've obviously got to work with, and I get that.
Right, and we have to continuously demonstrate that it has a water quality improvement
Precisely, yeah.
capability.
Okay, appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay. I don't have any, you pretty much took my question, which was any variations on the,
Yeah.
meditation garden. Yeah. Any other questions or comments?
I'd like to make a few comments. I'd appreciate it if you'd let me finish and then you can respond. The members of this dais have an obligation, a fiduciary obligation to the residents of this township. And to the extent that we see something that may be wasteful or inappropriate, we have an obligation to pursue it. When I saw the letter that you had drafted requesting the 6-month extension, there were some things in that letter that didn't look right to me. Having been a lawyer for 31 years, I tend to trust my instincts on those sorts of things. So I requested our CFO to send me all the information that she had on this particular grant contract. And between the CFO and our clerk, I received 2 packages by email. One was the grant contract, and the other was the financial information associated with this grant from inception through June 30th of this year. one of the first things I did was I looked at the breakout, which I have here, through June 30th of this year. And through that date, $228,678.48 was spent of the grant money. $77,700.20, or 34% of the grant money, went to your firm as fees. That struck me as inordinately large, an inordinately large percentage of the money that was spent. I then dug in around a little bit to see whether this contract was put out for bids, and best I can tell, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it was not put out for bid. It was just given to you. I then start doing some more poking around, and I find out that your wife was on the planning board, and that one of your employees apparently was on the planning board twice, because I found something indicating that she resigned in April 2012, but I also found that she was an alternate in 2014. Now, I know from experience that the key committees in this township, during the period that the EADA was running this township, tended to be largely, if not entirely, staffed by people who were EADA insiders or very friendly to the EADA. In terms of donations, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not an expert in election law, but I did speak to someone who knows something about election law and campaign contributions, and they tell me that donations can be made by businesses and they do not have to be reported. For example, if they're made below a certain threshold, they do not have to be reported. If they're made to certain types of PACs, apparently they don't have to be reported. I also had a resident, and I did not verify this myself, but he walked up to me with his iPhone and said, I found that Sousa made a donation to West Amwell. I can't verify whether that's true or not, but what I can say is that's what I was told. Then I find out that this project assisted Iron Horse Drive, and lo and behold, you live on Iron Horse Drive. So I put all that together and I get very suspicious. Nobody's disparaging your wife. Nobody's disparaging your employee. I said nothing disparaging about your wife. All I did was state a fact, that she was on the planning board. So what I have before me is a contract that was not put out for bid. A contract that was awarded to someone whose wife was on the planning board, whose employee was on the planning board twice. I know from my own experience that the EADA did not randomly put people on the planning board. It was generally insiders or supporters on key committees. 34% of this grant went to fees. I spoke to a couple of engineers who told me that's way out of market. So I put all this together, and that raises my antenna. If you don't understand that, then I don't know what to say. But as a fiduciary, I am obligated to explore these things. That's what I did. Do I think that something rotten is going on here? Absolutely, I do. Particularly the way you reacted at the beginning of this. Because righteous indignation, I found over time, is what people who aren't telling the truth express. Rather than dealing the facts, they express righteous indignation. So you asked me if I wanted to respond to you. I've responded to you. If you want to address any of those comments, you should feel free.
I will address all of them. So first off, in terms of righteous indignation, let's take some lessons from our current president. All right. So yes, I was upset. You made some comments. I listened to those comments, and I have the right to as a resident of this town, never mind as a business owner in this town, as a resident of this town, to defend myself and to set the record straight, which I did. As far as like a contribution by a Sousa, which is the Portuguese surname equivalent to Smith, by the way, in West Amwell, I have absolutely no idea what that's about. I've never contributed to any political party. I'll say that, I'll put that under oath, and neither has my wife. We have never made a single political contribution to any party. Have we contributed to the fire department? Yes. Have we contributed to the Little League or to the soccer team or supported school functions or the rescue squad? Absolutely. Political contributions, never. And in terms of any political contribution, this form does not, that we file with the state, does not specify that it has to be under a particular amount. It's any contribution. We have never made a single contribution. If you know anything about Princeton Hydro, you'll know that we do a lot of work for non-governmental organizations, and we, in respecting those organizations, we made a decision right from the beginning that we would never contribute to any political party, even if that party supported environmental causes. So we never have. I'll go under oath for that. I have no qualms about that, and there's no righteous indignation associated with that. That's just fact. In terms of improvements to Iron Horse Drive, you need to look at your facts again, okay? The grant was not written in any capacity to do that. The township took that on themselves to make those improvements because they had a resident that had nothing at all to do, that resident didn't even live in that home when this grant was written. Had nothing at all to do with the protection of that property. We made improvements because it was flooding on that property, but it had nothing at all to do with that property or that property owner. From the beginning, it was to make water quality improvements to the back brook. You talk about this grant or our services not being put out to bid, that was up to the town. There was no agreement. I approached the town. First off, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but in order to even apply for grants of this nature, you have to have an approved watershed protection plan. I wrote the watershed protection plan for this town. There's only 18 of those plans written and approved by DEP in the entire state. I've authored 5 of those, and Princeton Hydro has authored 6. That's 30% of the total, or more than 30%, 33% if you want to get exact. So when I saw an opportunity for funding, and the funding was only available for the Upper Raritan, I approached the town and said, I am willing on my own dime, not expecting, I'm not telling you you have to give us the work. I'll write this proposal, submit it to DEP. I did the same thing for West Amwell. I did the same thing for Union Township. I did the same thing for Reddington Township, all of which were in the same drainage area and could file for the grant. Okay. We did receive money for West Amwell, grant money that went to the town. We received grant money for Reddington. We didn't receive grant money for Union. They weren't charged nobody was charged anything for our proposal writing. It takes a lot to write these proposals. If the town would have wanted to turn around and give it to your township engineer, fine. There would have been nothing that I would have said about it. There was nothing that I could have done about it. It was up to you to do that. So yes, the project came to us. You question about the fee. I would agree with you. If it was strictly for engineering, that is high. Typically, engineering fees are about 20% of the total cost of a project. Keep in mind, I have to do, along with that, we have to do environmental modeling. So we have to actually project what the pollutant load reductions are. We have quarterly reports that need to be submitted to DEP. We have a closeout report that needs to go to DEP. All of that and there's interim reports that we're submitting to DEP. All of that comes under that. There's meetings that we've had, multiple meetings that we've had with the town. We've had meetings with Boy Scouts, with volunteers. I mean, all of that comes out of the grant. There's project administration costs. So you have the right to question the fees. And if you want to make the point that it's like 34% of everything that has been billed to date, I'm not going to argue with that. If you look at it from what it was projected, if you look at just the engineering component would have been about 15% if the total $330,000 in construction money was spent. Okay. So if you want to break it down and look at it from that perspective, we can do that. But yes, you're correct. The amount that has been charged to date is roughly about $77,000, but it covers far more than just the engineering. And as far as the cost of these projects, there's a lot more that goes into these. We have to file for soil conservation permits. We have to do construction oversight and provide that reports back to the county. As I said before, we're reporting back to DEP. There's soil testing that needs to be done ahead of time. We had to interface with the pipeline company to ensure that we weren't going to blow up the town by making the modifications over the pipeline. So there's a number of additional things that come into play. And never at one, Margaret could have questioned any of that. I would have been more than glad to come in and sit down with people and talk about that. But we prepared the grant for the town. It was done because there was an opportunity there. And am I glad that we got the work? Yes, I'm glad that we got the work. I'm proud of the work that we're doing here. This is going to be another showcase project for DEP. And they're already touting this as a showcase project. So am I proud of the work? I'm absolutely proud of the work. And am I glad I had the opportunity to do something to give back to the community that I live in? Absolutely. Absolutely. And if Princeton Hydro wouldn't have got the job, so be it.
You finished? Look, I go back to where I was, which is, I spoke to people. Those people understand the way these projects are done. They said 34% is way beyond market. I go back to where I was. Your wife was on the planning board. You had an employee on the planning board twice. I know you shrug your shoulders and say that doesn't mean anything. So the only thing that means anything is what you say, and the objective facts mean nothing.
Well, let me ask you
Because
something, Mr.
everything
Wolf.
I'm saying is objective.
Okay, let me ask you something, Mr. Wolf. Does the planning board issue contracts? Does the planning board approve contracts? No, they don't. It's this township committee that approves contracts and issues contracts. Planning board doesn't do that.
That has no bearing on the point I'm making. The point I am making,
You're inferring that because my
you're not
wife
letting me
served...
finish, you're interrupting me. I
Go right
extended
ahead.
you the courtesy of speaking
And
without
I'm-
interruption. I'd
Go
like
right
the
ahead.
same courtesy.
Go right ahead, sir.
You had a wife on the your wife was on the planning board. You had your employee on the planning board twice. As I said earlier, the EADA did not randomly put people on the planning board. This contract did not go out to bid. Everything you've said, or virtually everything you've said, was subjective. This is what I thought. This is how I felt. I was trying to be a good citizen. You were trying to be a good citizen. 34% of this grant money went to your firm. This contract was not put out to bid. You had a family member and an employee on the planning board. I have professionals telling me that these fees are way beyond the pale. So to sit there and say that there's no basis for me questioning this contract or questioning what was going on here, which sounds like what you're saying, I have no basis for this. I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. I have a lot of basis for this. This objectively doesn't look good. This looks like another EADA sweetheart inside deal awarded to a friend. It didn't cost the East Amwell Township taxpayers anything directly, but it did cost all of us because we all, in one way or another, paid into that grant money. So I'm sorry, but I don't accept the notion that you were just being a good citizen here. The objective facts lead me to believe that this was just another EADA sweetheart deal.
May I ask a question? So if your would you be able to share your source with us and exactly what their comparison was? I'm just curious of that.
I can ask them.
And what are they going to tell you? Is it
I don't know until I ask. I can't answer that question.
so? Can you tell us who that source is, though? Can you share that information with us?
I will ask them if they're okay with me sharing that information.
And I
Well, you're
did,
sharing it,
I'm sharing the information. I haven't shared the source.
but we also don't know exactly what that information you're saying is.
It doesn't matter whether you know it or not. What matters to me is when I looked at this, it looked bad to me. When I saw 34% of the grant money going to fees, that seemed crazy. I even have some of my own experience. I built a house in East Amwell. I had all kinds of work done for my stormwater management. The bills that were coming in were a teeny tiny fraction. of these numbers, and there was a lot of work done. The firms did a lot of work. Golden Bale did a lot of work. I wasn't getting these kinds of bills. This didn't look right to me. So I made phone calls to people that I know that I thought could be helpful here, and I asked questions and I got responses. And the responses I got, it was like peeling an onion. Every time I peeled a layer, I found another one. And by the way, I didn't find out about the planning board membership on my own. As I started talking to people, people said to me, of course this was a sweetheart deal. And they started feeding me more information. Now, part of the problem you have when you try to lay out factual information or information that you hear from residents, residents don't want their name disclosed because for years they feared EADA retaliation if they did in any way challenge the EADA. And so now that's starting to change, and people are getting more comfortable, in part because of sessions like this, in part because this committee is not afraid of the EADA, and we're not afraid to stand up to the EADA, and residents are finally starting to see that you can stand up to the EADA and there's really nothing there.
Okay,
They'll come to the meeting like this,
So
they'll be
let's-
remarkably rude.
We're not open to the public.
so let's,
Is this a political rally or a township meeting?
It's a township meeting.
Well, it doesn't sound like it.
I am, I just said we're not open to the public, and we'll conclude this conversation when it's finished.
so let's just go back to your point.
Yes.
Again, the 34%, I'm not arguing with you on that. I'm telling you what you have to do is go back to your source, peel back the onion, as you're saying, and take a look at how much of that is engineering fees, design fees, and how much is associated with other elements of the project that need to be dealt with, that are not dealt with on a conventional project. You say that you didn't spend that much money on your stormwater base or whatever you did at your house. These projects are done on the prevailing wage, okay? We have to prepare bid specs. Those bid specs need to be reviewed. They need to be submitted to the township. There's editing that happens with those. They go out. The town asked us to review the bids that came in for the contractors that were doing the work and work with them to find the most acceptable bidder. We participated in that at the request of the town. So yes, there's a lot of fees there. But Mr. Wolf, if you go back and you talk to your engineering friends and you have them look at how much is specific for engineering and for design, it's far less than the total 34%.
Look, again, all I can say is I look at this and I see 34% of a grant going to fees on a contract that was not put out for bid to a contractor who had people on the inside in this township. That obviously raises suspicions. And I still, having sat here and listened to you, continue to believe that this is just another EADA sweetheart deal. Awarded to a friend of the
I'm not
EADA.
going to be able to convince you otherwise, so you can hold on to that fantasy for as long as you want, okay? I served on the Board of Health, I served on the Environmental Commission, I served on the Planning Board myself. I can tell you probably during the majority of that time, or at least a good portion of it, the Republicans were in control. Somebody approached me, I can't even remember who, to say, do you want to be on the Board of Health? They knew I had a degree, they knew I lived in town. I said, sure, I'll contribute back to the town. Once I moved my company here to Ringo's, I stepped back from all of that because I felt that would be a conflict of interest. So you could have gone through your records and you'd see that I served on a number of committees. And I'm sure if you go back and look at it, you'll see there was probably Republicans in charge as well as Democrats. It doesn't make a difference to me. I don't really care. I'm here, personally, my involvement with the town on those boards was to protect the environment of this town. That's what I'm all about. That's been my career, to protect the environment. And believe me, it was up to the town. If you wanted to put it out to bid, you could have put it out to bid. I made no sweetheart deals with anybody. Again, I'll go down, I'll go under oath for that. There was nothing that was done underhanded. I approached the town, said, do you want to have an opportunity to get some grant money, and where would you like to spend it? It has to be within the Backbrook watershed, and it was directed to the park. I was directed to the park, and we identified potential projects there that could be implemented. It would have to be on township property, and it had to be something that could make an improvement to water quality. And I saw our opportunity there. You can make whatever you want out of it. I'm not going to persuade you. I can see that otherwise. I'm not here to persuade you. I'm a scientist, and we'll stand by our work. We've won plenty of awards for our work. We're recognized by DEP as an extremely reputable company. And I've done work of this nature for many other municipalities and for other nonprofits, et cetera. So you can have your own opinion. You can have your own conspiracy theory. I'm not going to stand here and take everybody's time to argue this further. And I'll tell you right now, if it's the committee's desire to have Princeton Hydro stop working on this project right now, we'll stop working on it. You just give me the word. We'll walk away from it. It's your call.
Well, because you missed the deadline, there may not be any more projects, so you may be stopping on nothing.
We're going to get to 6 months.
The 6 months, by your own admission, isn't going to do anything for us.
It will do something for you. I was asked by Jason to make improvements to those features. We can make those improvements within that 6 months.
You can spend $8,000 of a remaining grant of over $200,000. That's not doing much.
It's doing a lot. What you don't understand is that what does the work is the soils and the plants. And making those plants and soils functional once again on a site where all the topsoil was stripped off goes a long way. You don't need a lot of concrete. You don't need a lot of structure. Green infrastructure is all about using soil and plants to improve stormwater quality, reduce flooding, and improve the overall quality of runoff, or lessen the amount of runoff that's generated from a site.
I agree with you. It is the soil and the plants. And that's why I find 34% or $77,000 just way beyond the pale. I don't need to spend $77,000 for somebody to come in and replace some soil and put in some plants.
And I'm not going to argue with you on that. You're going to stay firm with that, and that's your objective. Feel free.
Okay, are there any other questions?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, next on the agenda is the standing committee reports. We have a website and communications committee, update regarding the launch of the township's new webpage. Will that be Allison?
Yes.
Okay, I have our new production website in my hands. I've been working on it for the last couple of weeks, or week and a half. It's looking good. I had a couple of solid days, full days of training to really work on the back end of the website. And there's so much functionality in the new website. There's so much we can do with it. But I need to spend some time now, between now and next week, just from what I've learned, building out some of that website to be where we can bring it to before we add more to it. Civic Plus brought over what we had on our old website, and they look at it and they make an assessment of where to logically place it on the website, and they do a great job of that. But there's some moving around and stuff I need to do with it. And then next week, and I will build out from learning what I've learned, I'll build out the Parks and Recreation page to make that look really cool with lots of functionality. And then I'm going to train up the, give all the admins and whoever we decide, all the people have permissioning on the website to do the initial updates that they can do, simple updates, start small, and then they can learn as they go along how to do the other stuff too. So our launch party is on the 25th. The aim is next week I will be reaching out to all the admins and Terry and everyone to give them all a quick rundown on the easy stuff to do, posting agendas and minutes and simple updates. So and they'll all be able to do that really easily. It's really easy. So and then and then they can have at it. They'll have there's levels of security. So essentially they can there's different levels of permissioning. So we permission each person to have different levels of permissioning and different sections of the website. So for example, the recreation admin can work on the recreation page and not other people's pages, obviously. So it's looking good, and then we'll have the launch party, and it will launch, and then we don't just wash our hands and say goodbye. We are myself, Steve, Ippoliti, Jessica, our admin, and Krista is helping us. We're all going to be on hand helping people get through some issues they may have. But I think everyone's going to really enjoy it. There's tons of functionality on there. There's lots of stuff we can add once we get going. So it's going to be good. So. Anyone got any questions for me?
Could you just go into a little of the logistics of the launch party itself? Are you going to be displaying the website?
Yep. We'll have the screen down. We'll show the website. I'll run through, the different pages and functionality that's on there. We won't have all the functionality up for day one, and that wasn't expected to be like that way. But we're going to work on that, and we're going to, work through things like, moving towards some things people being able to pay online for certain things. That will come, but that won't be day one. We'll be open. We'll have snacks and things here. Everyone can just come along, and if they can ask questions. There'll be a short presentation on the website, and then people can just ask questions, and I'll just run through things that I know that people may want to see that works on the website. So, yeah.
Tim, can we ask Allison questions?
Does anyone object?
No, it's
Okay. Yeah.
Allison, I'm coming to the launch party, but one of the things I want to be able to do is expand the ag advisory page and post articles for farmers. Would it be better to work through our administrative person to do that, or how do I interact with that?
Okay, so my initial thought for this was to really keep the access small, one person per committee, and that was to be the admin person because they've got to post things like minutes, agendas, or things like that they could do. But having worked through it now, I think it's going to make more sense to have two. I think it'd be nice to have somebody else on each committee that is interested in and capable of adding content to the pages. So it definitely we can give you permissions for your page, and you'll be able to get into your ag advisory page. You'll be able to do everything that I'm saying, update, add links, everything else. There is a level of permissioning, which is you'll have author permission, which is you'll be able to go in there and do all the things, put everything up there, but it does take an authorised press of a button for that to go live on the website. It's just a permission step, and it will be, the turnaround on that will be the same day. So,
and part of the question is, would it be most useful for me to come to the launch party or to attend the admin
well, the training sessions will give you more. That will give you more chance to work with me, and I can help you specifically with what you want to do. And then also that's not the end of the training. I'm happy to sit with anyone one-on-one and go through things that they need to do and want to do, because it takes time to sink in. For me, it did anyway. And actually doing it, that's the other thing. I did 2 full days training. It was solid online, one-on-one on the PC training. And you get to day 2 and you've forgotten some of the things you've learned on day 1. But actually doing it on the website, it sinks in. So that works better. So I'm happy to sit with anybody to do that. So, and the launch party is really more for the general public to see what's out there for them to get out on there once it's up, really. So, I'll work with anybody that wants to, do some updates within the committees.
So Alison, one thing I heard there that might be maybe policy is maybe each committee should have a communications liaison to the website.
Yeah.
In
She's
addition,
already working on that.
Okay, in addition to the administrative people. Okay,
Exactly.
good,
Yeah.
Good.
So.
Well, that's exciting. Anyone have any questions?
Like what I saw so far.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Did you want to follow up with anything?
We all just sat here and listened to Mr. Sousa say that he never made a donation, Princeton Hydro, to a political party. I got an email. It shows Princeton Hydro, LLC, making a $750 donation on April 2nd, 2007 to the Hunterdon County Republican Political Party Committee. I'll make sure to introduce this into the record. I'll also do some of my own digging to see what else is out there. I don't know, Carl, if there are any legal penalties, because he sat here, said he would testify under oath. I don't know if he was testifying under oath, that he never made a donation. He made a donation. You know, it's really interesting that the EADA folks sit here and laugh when somebody comes in and lies. You all think that lying to the residents of East Amwell is perfectly acceptable, and you think that when somebody calls them out for lying, that that's a bad thing. Lying to the residents isn't a good thing. And this sort of lie just undermines even further everything he said. And I'll bet you if we do some digging, we're going to find other donations, because this just popped up on my BlackBerry a couple minutes ago.
Okay, again, we're not open to
I'll
the
put it in the
public.
record. The source is right here. This is an official document, a contribution document from elecstate.nj.us. So it's New Jersey. That's my source. It's the New Jersey Election Committee. That's my source. It will be part of the record. You're welcome to examine it. He sat here and said he didn't make a donation. In 2 minutes, somebody emailed me, there's a donation.
Okay. Okay, let's move on. Next up is an interview of a candidate for the East Amwell Township Boards or Committees. Who is that? What was the name, Chantel? Chantel? Is Chantel here? Chantel? Okay, well, if Chantel comes back, we'll plug her back into the agenda. Okay. Okay. No appointments. Okay, approval of the minutes. We're deferring.
I have a quick update from the East.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry, Dave. Yes, a quick update on the Trex program.
Right, from the Environmental Commission, this is an update on the Trex recycling. The plastics collected to date, 392.6 pounds. Trex allows different groups within a township, such as the Recycling Committee, Recreation Committee, to collect 500 pounds, but a different person needs to serve as contact. When we reach our goal of the first 500 pounds of plastics, another individual will need to sign up at the Trex website to begin the process for the next 500 pounds. To facilitate plastics collection and documentation, might the TC provide a scale to be stored in the trailer for weighing plastics, and a key that can be accessed readily by volunteers, as opposed to providing keys to people, individuals. Third point, Kirkpatrick Memorial Presbyterian Church is interested in potentially collecting 500 pounds for a bench, but Pastor Mike Atzert wants to know the details of the work required. He also is willing to defer to the Recycling or Recreation Committee for the next 500 pounds. To encourage residents to decrease the use of plastic bags, is the TC willing to consider providing tote bags to residents who bring in plastics for Trex? And this is the example that I was given. It wouldn't say Rutgers, though, of course. So I think those are a little over $1 a piece. And, I'm supposed to show you, this is a picture of the bench that Trex will provide once we get to 500 pounds. The first bench is slated to go along the Rocky Brook Trail. If you all haven't visited the Rocky Brook Trail, it's a very nice walk, although I would wait till the water recedes, because all the stream crossings are probably underwater at this point. And actually, that's the last point. We should schedule an unveiling and walk along the Rocky Brook Trail once the signs and the bench are installed. So Patsy's been working with DEPCOR to get signs for the Rocky Brook Trail at each trail head, and then a sign for where the old mill used to be. But I think I covered everything. That's just an update on Trex. So we're pretty close to the first 500 pounds.
If we want to do tote bags, and they're a little over $1 each, why not offer the local businesses the opportunity to put their logos on them and hand them out to the residents? Like Madalena's, Rutgers, Sweet Valley.
Yeah, we could look into that.
Okay. So we're going to defer the minutes, Terry?
Yes, they were extremely long minutes, and most of them are finished. I'm just waiting for Pam to finish our section.
Yeah.
We can mix them together for the next
Yeah,
meeting.
why don't we do that? We'll just defer them all.
Decided to hold the September 20th one, because I don't have the corrections from Mr. Wall.
Yeah, why don't we just take them as a batch and take them next meeting? That's fine, okay? Okay, we're now open to the public.
Want to approve the executive ones then? Because we did get corrections from Mr. Wall and the corrections from the executive.
They were non-substantive, they were in the nature of typos to the executive.
Okay,
Basically, they were just
Okay.
non-substantive
I
comments.
mean, I'll move the executive minutes from September 13th.
I'll second.
okay, any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Okay, we're now open to the public. Yes,
Rich Spiegel, One Mountain Road.
Terry, we're getting a little bit of feedback. Terry, we're getting some feedback.
Tell them who you are.
Yeah, Mike Stritzky, 26 Centertown Road, Hopewell.
Okay,
How we
before you,
doing
before
tonight,
you, st-
okay, gentlemen?
yeah, before you start, Rich, we're getting feedback, Terry. I don't, is there
I'll
anything we can
move it
do?
up. I'll move it back.
Yeah, it just seemed to have started, so.
I talk loud because I can't hear that good, so just tell me.
Is that better? Can anyone else?
Okay.
Is anyone else hearing?
Uh,
Yes, go ahead.
Paying attention to the minutes in the past, I read the minutes after every meeting. And there was discussions on some things pertaining to energy and things like that in town, like the lights at the soccer field.
Yep.
Okay. And the other thing that even during my time, where I had Mike into the building twice to give, a lecture on his particular field, and it keeps getting put on a back burner. And of course, you know what that is, hydrogen, solar. Okay? So the first thing is, like I say, where have we gone with the lights at the soccer field, and where have we gone with the energy to the building, which the least we spend, the more we don't have to use off of the line item budget for the building. Give you a quick look on that. When I took office here, the building was basically condemned. There was a 20-page environmental study on the building saying that the employees were working unsafe. The only one here could verify that would be Terry. There was mold all over the place. They had a leaky roof since 1996 when the building was opened up. They just didn't want to pay attention. There was a letter here in the building from the structural engineer not to pay the contractor. Actually said that. My advice is not to pay because the job wasn't performed according to specs. They paid him anyhow. Then when he got paid, he went out of business. So there it goes, trying to get your money. He went Chapter 11, is what he did. So in the first 6 months, I got the building taken care of. And what we did is, in case you don't know, is the roof was high-density foam, which is the newest product on the market, which I had experience with during my time in the construction field for 40 years, okay? It was very new. We had some left over in the budget. We had the back wall done. If you ever walk around the back of the building, that's styrofoam high-density insulation back there. In the very first year, I went to our treasurer at that time, got a receipt on our energy in the building from the previous year, and then got a receipt for the energy after 1 year of installation on the roof and the back wall. And our energy consumption for the building was completely reduced. Not only in the summer, but in the winter. Summertime, you got to realize that your outdoor weather sucks your air-conditioned weather outside, okay? So I think, and Mike, you can take over here because of what we talked about as far as the soccer field and the building. Mike, so you know, was in Trenton all day today? And you can tell them what you're in Trenton for.
Yeah, they're going to be putting in legislation that is going to bring the next wave of energy storage and transportation into being. Right now, they're going to be putting in refueling stations here for hydrogen vehicles. I just came back from 3 weeks in California where they're doing fuel cell tractor trailers. They're doing everything from pickup trucks, and they're converting all of their waste energy into hydrogen to run all of the vehicles in the ports. Government in California supports all of these advanced technologies, and now all of this is coming to fruition. Basically, everybody in the fuel cell industry, from the gas suppliers to the car makers, were in Trenton with their vehicles and talking about the fuel cell powered forklifts, and all these things are coming to the East Coast next. Right now, New Jersey is at a disadvantage because right now Massachusetts is eating our lunch. We're putting in roadblocks to stop this technology with global warming going crazy. We just saw the hurricane blow through yesterday. This is all global warming in your face and real. Whether you like it or not, unless we start slowing things down, there isn't going to be any future for our children and our grandchildren. We have the technologies, and you guys need to get ahead of it before you find yourself behind the curve. Right now, California is about 6 years ahead of us, and they've already made all the mistakes, in implementing this technology. So we are going to benefit from this. They're finding out right now that electric vehicles are not an answer. The amount of wire that has to be put in the ground in order to support these vehicles is 9 times bigger than the existing infrastructure. It takes the power of 9 homes to recharge 1 Tesla. In addition to that, in 5 years, these battery-powered cars end up in a landfill. All the batteries end up there. The lithium-ion batteries are 100% non-recyclable, and basically they end up in the landfill where you're drinking it in your water as a lithium cocktail. In addition to that, the vehicles are carrying 2 tons of batteries. These batteries have to be heated and air conditioned, and they have to be, you're dragging it around. It's all energy. The fuel cell vehicles have none of that disadvantage. This is the next wave. You're going to be able to use these vehicles exactly like they use the cars that we're driving today, except with none of the emissions. People don't realize you can fill these cars up in 4 minutes. You can do 360 miles real range, and you're looking at producing 12 gallons of drinking water every tankful. I just took delivery of the first, I should say I just bought the first hydrogen fuel cell vehicle in the Northeast, a Toyota Mirai, which is at my house, and I'm refueling from solar hydrogen from my home. These vehicles are real. Major automakers have crash tested them. Everything is safer than the existing technology. We live in a day that technology is determining what wealth is in the world. You either adapt it or you become extinct. When Kodak failed to adopt the digital technology, what ended up happening is they ended up going bankrupt on the technology they created. We have to embrace new things, and we have to embrace change. And we have to look at everything that we do and see whether it makes sense. There's so much junk science out there on what's going on, it's hard to decipher. But, I'm willing to give the township, my years of expertise in this field in order to make you guys a leader rather than a follower. When Hurricane Sandy came through, I was the only one up on the mountain with power, and all my neighbors were coming to my house. I have 120 days worth of storage in my tanks if the big nuclear ball in the sky goes out. And
So
right
Mike-
now,
Mike, can I just interrupt? So
yeah, go ahead.
this is open to the public, and I think there's going to be a lot more people. So
Okay, I
we
just
did-
wanted to
no,
stop
but
by and say
We
hello.
want to get you on the agenda. I think we tried in the spring a couple of times, and we had some miscues there.
I'm in
So-
California a lot.
Right, so what I'd like to do is invite you to either have a session here for the residents to just talk through this technology, and then also come specifically with some real concepts. So you mentioned the school.
We can bring a
the
vehicle
lighting.
down. I can, have people, my hydrogen house is open to the public 2 days a month.
Yeah.
So anybody's willing
I think,
to visit.
I think a special meeting would be more appropriate because of Mike's schedule being in California. Last year, he was in California half the year.
Well, we don't even need to have a special township committee.
Well, no,
We
I
could
said
have
a special
yeah,
meeting
Yeah, we could have a
because of
informational
his
meeting. Yeah.
calendar. I mean, the committee meetings are always on the same day, and this is the first one he's been,
Right.
actually, like I say, Mike, you're home, and there's a committee meeting tonight, where before I'd say, Mike, there's a committee meeting, he'd be in California.
And we appreciate it. By the way, for anyone who hasn't been there, I've been to Mike's house several times. I'm just fascinated by the technology. I keep telling my son to go hang out there, and he'll become a billionaire if he just learns a little bit of what Mike knows. So,
This stuff will change the world.
Yeah,
It's
it
the
will.
only thing that can turn the ship around and go the other way.
so why don't we do this? I appreciate you coming in, but since there are a lot of folks here, I'm sure they all have comments. So why don't we do that? Let's schedule, Mike, tell us, send us a note with available dates where you'd be willing to do a 1 to 2 hour sort of informational session for the residents, and we'll get the word out
Yeah,
on the
I mean, I
website.
could do it like an open house thing.
Yeah,
And I'd
right.
bring all my stuff.
Yeah, however you want to do it. Demonstrate the technology, get some energy, and then I'd love to specifically apply it to
What
some
good
of
is
the
it having a
things
cure
that-
for cancer if no one knows about it?
You know, precisely. I mean, to Tim's point, I would actually come back with some concrete proposals as well.
Yeah.
How could we implement it in the town here?
We did
Whether
one
it's-
a couple of years ago where we presented a whole system to take the township off grid.
We should
And
revisit.
there was a state grant at the time that we could have gotten it, but, it's still very viable. And, in the event of a hurricane or a disaster, the township will be able to provide at least water and power to residents, charge their cell phones, whatever.
No, it's right on, Mike. We're happy you're here, and like I said, we'll make every accommodation to your schedule
Okay, thank you.
to come in and present, okay?
All right, have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bring
you
that
very
car with you when you come back. Too. I wanna see it.
Okay, anyone else in the public have any comments? Yes? And this is comments pertaining to items not on tonight's agenda. Just clarify.
Stand or sit?
You may stand or sit.
I'll
Just
stand, okay.
identify yourself, please.
Sure. Joe Wolfgang. I live at 26 Zion Road in East Amwell. I know a few of you guys. So I've been in town for 21 years as of last month. It's a long time. I sat on the other side of the dais for about 5 years when I was on planning board. So I appreciate your time, you volunteering your time, spending your time up there, contributing to the town. It's a great experience. It's interesting to learn a lot about how to work with people and who your neighbors are, how things work. But I'm just really concerned about what I'm seeing tonight and what I've been seeing in the past year, the way the township committee has been conducting itself. It's really changed. It's scary, I think. I haven't been attending meetings, but of course everything's recorded, so it's very convenient to sit there on the couch and pet the dog and watch what's happening. And it kind of, the first 2 times I watched it, I thought, it's like watching a NASCAR race. I'm not a NASCAR guy, but it's kind of boring. The cars just go around and go around. Every once in a while there's a big crash, and that's what people focus on. And that's kind of what it felt like watching the videos. There's a lot of crashes going on. I don't think we need crashes up here on Township Committee. And the crashes are with the residents. These are your neighbors. These are your people who elected you. These are the people you represent. You don't need to have crashes. You don't need to punch them. You don't need to hit them. You don't need to insult them. You don't need to intimidate them. You don't need to humiliate them. You don't need to talk down to them. You don't need to treat them like idiots. All those things in one sentence. And I could go on, but I don't want to nauseate people. It was so upsetting watching the videos. It really was. Hearing how Mr. Wolf spoke to David about the potholes the other month, I watched that and I was like, you're kidding. This is what's going on. We're filling holes in the road. We're talking to people. I mean, David's a smart guy. You were mayor for a while, David. I don't think you were incriminated, put in jail, let out of here in handcuffs, or hung up on the cross or anything in all that time. What?
Not yet.
Not yet, but it could happen. Maybe you made mistakes. I think everybody that sat up there made mistakes. We spent 2 years making a tree ordinance that there was no way in the world this town can enforce it. That was a mistake, and I regret spending my life doing that, or participating in that for 2 years. But okay, you learn from it, and we get smarter, and I hope we get smarter. So I guess maybe I'm not a lawyer. I know Mr. Wolf is a lawyer. We hear that probably every night, that he's an accomplished lawyer. As the way I understand it, in the court, there's a judge that controls the lawyers. That's the judge's job. He's a professional. He reins the lawyers in. He tells them what they can't do, what they shouldn't do. Contempt of court has been known to happen sometimes. Okay, we don't have that here. We don't have a judge. I play ice hockey. If somebody was talking to me like that on the hockey rink, gloves would come off pretty quickly. That happens. It's called, it's getting somebody pushing for it. You're allowed to do that in hockey. There's a referee. People have penalties in hockey. you don't do that because you know what happens, okay? There's consequence. I don't see it happening here. And, Tim, you're the mayor. As I see it, you have to control what happens in this room. You have to control the township committee. It's on you. I know you. You're a smart guy. You're a good guy. I think you got to do a better job. What's happening up here, the accusations that we heard tonight, and at some point, somebody's going to come back and sue the town, okay? And it's going to cost this town a lot more money than every penny and nickel and dime that is supposedly being saved here, okay? That's when it gets ugly, and that's when it happens. And I got sued when I went on planning board for when Joan McGee got fired, okay? It's a sheriff knocked on my door, and a sheriff card served me with a subpoena. It kind of sucked having that happen. But that's what happens in towns when towns don't do things the way they're supposed to happen, okay? And I got to ask if we have one lawyer on township committee right now. This is what happens. I understand the candidate that's running on the Republican side right now is also a lawyer or aspiring to be a lawyer. Is this going to increase exponentially if you have two lawyers on committee? Is it going to be that much worse? Is this what lawyers do when they're in front of a microphone or in front of a camera? It seems that way. It seems that's the MO for being a lawyer, is to attack people, accuse people. This person told me that. This person, I read this. I heard this.
I have to ask, I'm sorry.
I've been asked to campaign, but I saw what a good job you did. I can never follow up with the job you did, Mr. Spiegel. I could never top that.
I was in this building 7 days a week.
I know, you're a
every
legend.
single day, and that's why the doors are open and the back door is shut, and the swinging door that was up front is locked.
We're going to need a street after you.
Okay, one at a time.
And the people.
Joe, I'll do the thing you want me to do, right?
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Let's
So don't get me started.
Let's let the speaker
All right,
speak.
sorry, so let me finish up. I think people understand where this is going, but I guess what I have to ask is, in this room, certain things can happen, but we live in the real world. And Tim, I know you work at ETS. I know other people that work at ETS, and I think if you were treating other coworkers like this, you probably get, I'm guessing it would be something like anger management class or something would happen. I had a situation at work, I'll be honest, I had an employee that worked for me, and I felt he wasn't doing a good job, and I had a meeting with him and my boss, and I made certain innuendos and accusations without facts. And what I heard Mr. Wolf saying tonight to Mr. Souza sounded so familiar with what I did. And after that meeting, my boss called me his office, and he said, Joe, you just really screwed up. He said, because you had these little things you heard from other people and innuendos, and I heard this, and I heard that. You didn't have any facts. And you just had a meeting with your employee where you kind of accused him of these things without documentation. And, and that was a lesson for me. And that was at work. I don't know if you can allow that to happen here. And it seems like you're accusing this guy of things that I think if the town feels that strongly, if the township committee, and you guys are the township committee, if you feel that strongly about it, take him to court, man. Make it stick. Don't sit here and insult somebody in this little back and forth game where they, he's vulnerable and he's trying to do a good job. Maybe there is I don't know. Maybe there's something that smells. If you feel that it's that ugly, you go to court. You take him to court. Don't play a game. It's a game. And Kevin, I know you're from Unigene, and if this happened at Unigene or your company, what happened to the employee? Would they tolerate this kind of people dealing with each other like that?
Well, they went out of business anyway, but there were other issues.
Right, see?
You were a Malvern guy, as I recall.
That's right, yeah. And so you heard what happened to me?
And you drive a Willys, so you got good
taste in
cars. You sold.
I sold it, right.
I digress.
We both like big horsepower cars. That hydrogen thing is a little shaky for both of us.
I like internal combustion.
Yeah. I don't know what hydrogen is.
Fossil fuels.
But at any rate, this is my point, my observations. I'm glad I came tonight because I got to see it firsthand. It was it validated what I saw on the videos. I hope other people have maybe taken the time to watch the videos. Like I said, it's torture. It's so much minutia and detail that everybody has to endure here. But it's kind of shocking when the lights come on and the fireworks start. And I don't think we need that. I don't think we need that. It doesn't accomplish anything. It doesn't promote the kind of relationship the township committee has had with its residents and people that want to get involved and want to make the town better. Okay, so thanks for listening to my little rant.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else?
Thank you for serving. I do think you guys honestly are doing some good things. I think it is necessary sometimes to get new blood and fresh blood. I don't think it means that previous people were doing awful things. I'm sure you look at things differently and will find different ways to do things, and I appreciate that attitude and thinking about things differently. But it can never hurt. So thank you.
No applause after that statement. Okay, anyone else have comments? Francis, yes.
Yeah. Plan on doing this. Francis Gavigan, 123 Wurtsville Road, resident since '95, so I got a little bit on it, yeah. If any of you have ever wondered, who's this lady up front with the camera? That is because of the frustration and the abuse and the disrespect and, shall we say, the moving facts that I observed at lots of meetings over the years. Planning Board, Board of Adjustment, occasionally Board of Health, things in that regard. I started videotaping 4 or 5 years ago so that if it came down to he said, she said, let's go to the videotape, and a former member of this committee in trying to do that, I said, we can go to the videotape. Only now is there transparency. First was with audio, and now it's with video, and yes, it can be excruciating. But I've been here alone for like 15 years. I would come back and forth from Rockville, Maryland when it was important, because I saw people going for variances, being bent over a barrel because, and to quote, well, we can, and things in that regard. Most people don't say anything. I'm Irish, I'm ornery, I'm oppositional. Say, insult what you want. I don't much care. I follow the conscience, and I have the data. I attend all these meetings. Earlier this year, I think it was around March, when the stages started here in preparation, and I'm speaking to you, Mr. Wolfgang, because I get the feeling that you're just coming in at the end and are, you know, at first glance, the rest of the story may not be apparent. It was, oh God, we're starting silly season already, and there were stacks of people clustered around the room that after all these years of coming, I recognized former elected officials, former employees, former this, that, and the other, and there would be a hue and cry and outcry and an occasional person that said, come along and watch the show. As recently as last month, it was, I heard told to a person who was leaving, wait, it's going to get good right now for the second open to the public. It's political theater. You don't have to go to CNN. You just have to make up your own mind, read the facts, read the stuff, and if you go through the minutia, much of which I have, and I've got better things to do with my life, believe it or not, the data and the facts are there. They don't come up in this kind of thing. There was a meeting back in '98, and I've had to say this before, and I apologize for those of few of you who may have heard it, is when the whole thing with the ordinance for getting on the ballot for open space, a person said, and I think he said it to Fred Gardner, and he said, well, how do I know it won't get used for something else? Oh no, it can. 4 months later, there was a rule, attorney was suddenly out of the picture, and lo and behold, guess what happened for a few years? That is the past. But the best prologue is the past. There has been a lot, people show up on my front lawn, especially in the past and not recently, and they would ask me to go find out what was going on down at the township or to say something because people are afraid. Now, as for retaliation, here's an example. A few years ago, after several years of being the chair of the Ag Advisory, everything was fine. I filed an Oprah request that didn't get filled until like the day after Christmas. I came a week later, and my name wasn't on the table. Suddenly, for a whole year, we didn't have an Ag Advisory Committee. And then it was reformed the following year with everybody but me. Minor detail? Yeah, who knows? I went through 1 year where there were 16 anonymous complaints on my property to where they started recycling them. That's not fantasy, that's fact. I have tons of data, and if I have to hire somebody to take the excerpts of people in the public acting badly and post them on YouTube, I will, whether it's somebody with their arm up the back end of a beaver hand puppet, or holding up red emojis, or a guy who comes in to complain about what had happened, I think that was March or April, about the outrage, and then before he could say anything, well, he left, I guess he went back to his TV. This is the theater of the absurd. That was prominent in 1973 and 4 when I graduated from college. It's now on a national and international level. But form your own opinion, and just because someone says something over and over and over again, that does not make it true. I'm 6'3" and 110 pounds. I'm 6'3" and 110 pounds. Me saying so doesn't make it so. But I can get on a scale and show you I'm 4'11" and 3/4 and about 230. I don't care what people think if I don't respect them, or I do for you, Mr. Wolfgang, because I think you somewhat maybe getting played, because nice people say nice things, and you can paint a picture and, oh, what a horrible human being. And perception can be reality. But there is a lot uglier stuff. You were sued. Carl behind you was sued. You know, Sue was doing the VIP. Les was a committee person. And a bunch of other folks that have been in and out of here. Look, and I'm not making a political speech, because I don't run for anything. What I do is I watch both sides, and I count the pennies. But I tell you one thing. I just bought a house in North Carolina because I will not go back to the way it was. And I don't think anybody else will either. Now, there'll be a certain section in the back there that would be thrilled to death if I either fell off the perch or moved to North Carolina. But the people who show up on my front door asking for help, they will be. And I'm going to wind it down. But if anybody wants to see the facts or have a specific question, now, by God, can I find it and show it and prove it. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Yes.
A quick question to Rich Spiegel. At the last comments made at the special meeting on roads, I believe you had said to the engineer and to Jason that you would get with them on deciding when to do this and get the contract together. Where has anything gone since the last meeting?
Yeah. So after the public opening, I'll comment on that. Okay.
All right, well, let me say what I want to say now then. Yeah. I'm hoping that what you're going to say is you're going to let it go till next year, 2018.
Yeah, the plan is to aggregate.
I have 40 years in the construction business, and believe me when I tell you, you do not do that type of work this time of year. The National Weather Forecast has said that the fall season is going to be late because of the warm weather. If you come down a mountain now and look out, you don't even see the trees turning colors. So that means the trees are going to start dropping late. So I don't think the taxpayer wants to spend his money to have the road crew prep a road that tomorrow, when the wind blows and the leaves start dropping, they're going to do it again and again and again. The time to do it is when your trees are strong, your leaves don't come down, and 30, 40 days that he has here on curing time, those numbers you can get off a website, but they don't know how to apply them, all right? I give you it simple. Do you think it would dry faster right now, or do you think it'll dry in July and August when it's 95 degrees? Curing time's going to be less. So you don't have chip and seal cure in temperatures below 70 to 75. And you want to speed up the curing, do it when it's 85, 90, even 100. It'll cure before you even put your tack on your shoes.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Tom Jarrett, Rainbow Hill and Wurstville Road. I don't know anything about the street contracts and the chip seal, but I'm a cyclist, and chip seal is the most miserable surface you can get for riding a bike. Unpaved roads around here are more pleasant than trying to ride on new chip seal. And it takes at least 2 years before your butt is not burning from vibrating across this stuff. So I don't know how much we save on this, but where you can, think of the cyclists.
Interesting perspective. Okay.
Get a new pipe with bigger tires.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Do I have a motion to close?
Move we close to the public? Second.
All in favor? Okay, before I want to make two comments. One is I want to address Mr. Spiegel, just to give an update. So, yeah, the Township Committee is going to defer this. We're going to aggregate it. We're going to carry over this year's capital, add it to next year's, do a much larger RFP to get better pricing and do the work in the late spring, early summer. That's the hope. And also, the DPW needs time to prep these roads, to get them ready for the chip seal if we go that way. And just an interesting comment, we get a lot of bicyclists and a lot of complaints about a lot of visiting bicyclists. So I understand you live here and you like the bicycle, but it might be a way of maybe asking some folks not to bicycle on our roads so much if we chip seal.
You can give him what he wants if he comes and picks up all the bottles and all the drink that they throw on my corner when I stop at the stop sign.
Okay, so that was one. The second comment I just want to make is I just want to, I hope folks appreciate the tone of these meetings. These meetings used to be limited to 15 minutes to open the public. When I took over as mayor, I said to this committee, we're not limiting this. I want full discussion from the public. If we have to go till 2 in the morning, I'm here and we'll do it. So with that, I allow everyone to speak. And I think the township committee members have every right, as both residents and elected officials, to speak on topics, as do the public. So I'm not about to shut people down and tell them that their time is limited. That used to happen, that won't happen anymore. So I hope you can appreciate that. At times, people have different styles, and I appreciate that. Everyone has a different style up here in the way they conduct themselves and the way they communicate, and I appreciate that. But we're all coming at this for the good of the residents and the good of the community. So I just wanted to make that comment. Does anyone else have any comments to make?
I'll amend that one. I think that was a very valid comment. I like the point.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to make a comment. I went to college a little older. I was 21 when I went to college, and when I got there, there was a handicapped student, mentally handicapped, had a high fever in his youth. He was there on a special program that was designed to help handicapped students get a college education and get some sort of decent job when they get out of college. There were 3 freshmen in the dorm that decided they wanted to get their jollies by picking on this handicapped student. That didn't sit very well with me. So having watched them pick on him for a while and finally spray shaving cream all over his room and think that was funny, I went and talked to those 3 students. Long story short, they told me to go F myself. That wasn't going to be the end of it. I had a good friend who was also a freshman, who was a little taller than I am, the size of a small house. We called him Tiny. And so I went to Tiny and I asked Tiny if he would do me a favor, if he would come and sort of be my bodyguard when I decided that I was going to put an end to what they were doing to the handicapped student. His name was Mark. Tiny poked a little bit of fun at me, but ultimately Tiny said that he would do it. So I went to the hardware store and I bought a can of what today is polyurethane spray foam. And I went down to their room with Tiny and knocked on their door. They were all hanging out in the room. And Tiny said to them, the first one of you that gets off of your bed, I'm going to break you in half. I then proceeded to go through their room with the can of spray foam and spray foam lots of things in their room. And that spray foam doesn't come off. And told them that if they ever bothered Mark again in any way, this was only the beginning. Why am I telling you this? Because I don't like bullies. I never have. And the EADA, these insiders, they're bullies. Mr. Wolfgang comes tonight and he professes to want to see good up on this dais. And how does he present himself? He says you shouldn't insult people, and in the course of his discussion, he proceeded to insult an entire profession. It's one thing to target me. It's another thing to target somebody you don't even know, Chris Sobieski, or to target an entire profession. Then he says if somebody talked to him the way I talk to people, he would take his gloves off. That shows me this guy has anger issues and has a potential for physical violence. So all I'm going to say to the EADA is I'm going to continue to do what I'm doing. And by the way, you are on camera blowing me kisses. I just want you to know the camera does point at you, so you are being videoed.
Certainly my anger.
The EADA continue to do what you do, and I'm going to continue to do what I do. And when you lie, I'm going to point it out. And when you're abusive, I'm going to point it out. And when you take credit for things that you don't deserve credit for, I'm going to point it out. And when you use the VIP, supposedly a neutral newspaper, for your own political purposes, I'm going to point it out. And I'm going to continue to do what I do. Whether I'm sitting up here on the dais or whether I'm in the chairs down there, I'm here for the duration. We built our forever house in East Amwell. The house has an elevator. I can go anywhere in the house in a wheelchair. I'm here forever. You guys want to continue to behave the way you are? I'm going to continue to behave exactly the way I am. I'm going to defend the residents. And I am not going to put up with the abuse and the lies. So you want to insult an entire profession, Mr. Wolfgang? You want to insult somebody you don't even know? That's your prerogative. But don't come up here with a holier-than-thou attitude. Because you're not holier than thou. You have anger issues. If anybody needs help, it's you. That's all I have to say.
Okay, any other comments? Okay. No consent, we're at 10 on the agenda, no consent agenda items. Okay, we have some public hearings. So first up is ordinance 18-19, an ordinance of the Township of East Amwell County, County of Hunterdon, and State of New Jersey, amending Chapter 43 of the Code entitled Affordable Housing to address the requirements of the Fair Housing Act and the Uniform Housing Affordability Controls Act regarding compliance with the township's affordable housing obligations.
Okay, as proof of publication, the legal notice from the Hunterdon County Democrat, September 20th, 2018. The ordinance has been available to the public since introduction on September 1st.
Okay, we're open for a public hearing now, and I do see our planner here, so if anyone does have any questions that the Township Committee can answer, our planner is here to answer any questions. Does anyone have any comments or questions regarding ordinance 18-19? Yes.
My name is Chris Vogel. I live at 5 Manners Road, Gringos. I've been in the township for about 28 years, I guess. And I'll plead ignorance. I don't understand a lot of this stuff. But I do have a couple of questions that I would like, hopefully, to get some clarification. And hopefully that clarification will help other people like me who have questions. Okay. First thing I would like to say that the people that wrote this did a pretty good job. It doesn't have all of the obfuscations that you see from many people. And what I would like to do is just go to a couple of particular sections and then ask a question. I do have questions on the second document that will be reviewed this evening, and I'll hold off on that until that time comes. Okay. First thing, in section 43.1, monitoring and reporting requirements. The township is required to do a whole bunch of reporting. That certainly makes sense. And the first thing in item 1, it says that the reporting shall include an accounting of all affordable housing trust fund activity, including the source and amount of funds collected and the amount and purpose for which any funds have been expended. That's great. Question: where do those funds come from?
Okay,
Joanna, do you want to come up
Yeah,
here?
Joanne, why don't you come up? This is our planner.
Good evening. Do you want to come up here and sit here and answer, and you can, that way you can...
Sure.
Do you want to come up?
That's a great question, by the way.
Full answer in New Jersey is from us.
There you go.
Good evening. Yes, the funds that are contribute to what we call our development fee ordinance, those are collected through a variety of developments that happen within the township. Now, currently, you can collect development fees for residential, new residential construction, and also for non-residential construction and reconstruction. So there's a set percentage from the state that each municipality can collect. Those funds are set aside in a very specific, what we call an affordable housing trust fund, and all of that money is used for our affordable housing obligation mechanisms. So that all that money goes in and comes out just for one specific purpose.
So that funds then are raised from within the township, is that correct?
Right.
Okay, so our taxes are going to go up.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't go by your taxes. It goes by your construction activity.
Okay.
When I built my house, I got charged $35,000, I think, that went into that trust fund for the privilege of building my house. That's what funds that trust fund.
So it's based on a percentage of your assessed value. So it's 1.5% for a new residential unit, and it's 2.5% for any square footage for non-residential units.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I'm glad I'm not building. I wouldn't have the $35,000.
I built a small house. If you built a big house, it would even more.
Okay, another question here, please. I never did well in mathematics, although I did well in geometry, analytic geometry, algebra, and calculus. But when it comes to simple basic numbers, sometimes it doesn't add up, and that's where my question's coming from. If you take a look at the table that's presented here, 4-line table, for affordable housing obligations. And you see it says component of third round obligation. Rehabilitation share, 0 units. Prior round obligation, 40 units. Third round obligation, 128 units. Now, my question is, the prior round obligation, that's something that's already been bought into, I presume, and that those 40 units are going to have to be built in order to fulfill that obligation. And with the third round, there will be an additional 128 builds that have to be done. Is that correct? Are they additive, or is the 40 included in the 128?
No, they're separate numbers. The prior round was a 1995 to 2005 time period. Those units have already been satisfied by the township.
They have been satisfied. Yes. So now we're looking at a total of 128 units that will have to be built in order to fulfill the obligations from this third round. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. So then,
Oh, wait, we don't have to
the
build
prior...
Hold on one second.
We don't have to build 128, we have to build 83 or 84.
128 is the total unit credit that the municipality has. How we get to that new construction versus what's bonus credits is a different discussion.
Right, but if in terms of, if the question is how many additional units do we need to build to satisfy our obligation, it's 84, I believe?
Yeah,
it's not 128, it's around 84.
Here, third round prospective share, a minimum of 89 new construction affordable units will be produced on the 4 parcels of land that are covered in this document. So you've got 128 that need to be built, and you have to get 89 of them built within a certain time frame. What's going to happen about the rest? When do they have to be built, and under what authorization?
Well, we don't have to build any units.
Okay.
All we have to do is make available land upon which those units can be built. So there were, and you correct me if I'm getting any of this wrong, I've been somewhat intrigued by this, but there are 4 plots in East Amwell that we designated as plots upon which you can build with higher density than typically would be allowed in East Amwell. And we made that available on those plots. There's enough availability to construct the required number of units if somebody wanted to come in and do it. We don't have an obligation to build them. But if a builder wants to come in and build them, we have to allow them to build them on those 4 lots. They would have to put in their own water and storage because you could not accommodate that kind of density with septic. So a builder would have to come in and put in their own water and storage and build those units. So there's no obligation for East Amwell to spend money to build the units. We just have to make the opportunity available to builders if they want to do it.
Okay. So
And
this
Rick,
is
the land is not owned, the land is privately owned, not publicly owned.
Correct. The land is owned, 2 parcels are owned by the Thompson Realty. One is Case, and the 4th one is Scabelia. And they're all sort of around the Ringo's Village. 2 of them are on the other end of 202, and 2 are right outside of the village.
Thank you. That answers my 4th question, which was, did the township already buy these properties? No, they did not.
No, we just had to rezone them or do an overlay zoning to allow the denser construction.
The last question that I have with regard to this document is in section 43.1, monitoring, reporting, I'm sorry, my mistake, I misspoke. Okay, we clarified that. Too much paper. Okay, here it is, I'm sorry. Section 43:17, Municipal Housing Liaison. This requirement is that the Township of East Amwell shall appoint a specific municipal employee to serve as a municipal housing liaison responsible for overseeing the township's affordable housing program. And this person shall be appointed by the governing body and can be either a full or part-time municipal employee. And this person is responsible for oversight and administration of the affordable housing program in East Amwell. So we're going to have an additional employee
We already
coming
do.
in?
No,
We already have one.
We've had
We have one.
Yeah, we've had him for
Okay.
years, yes.
We pay about $5,000 a year, I believe. He's part-time. And he monitors the affordable housing that we currently have. When people move in or out, or those that are owned when they want to sell, he shepherds them through the process. But he is already on the payroll, and I think it's $5,000 a year we're paying.
Okay. My question is this. Since the state has mandated this program, did anybody within the community go to the state and say, hey, how about paying for the new employee?
The courts mandated the program, not the state, actually. The Supreme Court concluded that due process under the New Jersey Constitution requires that every community have some space available for affordable housing. So it's really more of a court thing than a state thing. That's why the program is as broken as it is. If we're going to say anything to the state, it should be, why don't you take this over like the courts have invited you to and put together some sort of sensible affordable housing program. But so far the state has been unwilling to do that, and every time they've attempted, they failed miserably, mainly because politics get involved as opposed to what's best for the residents of the state, and the whole thing just crumbles.
Political involvement seems to permeate everything from the federal right down to the local.
Sad but true.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, question, yes.
It's Spiegel. Listen to gentleman's questions, that we know how we got this far from the original Mount Laurel ruling back, way back, okay? I won't say when. And the reason where we're at today is because there was a 10-year lap that COA wasn't doing its job, all right? When Governor Christie got into office, he signed an executive order for a committee to overlook and come back with information. Actually, Senator Marcia Caro headed that committee. And again, going to what you just said, why the state didn't just address these things. They didn't address anything in that committee that he even put together on to address this situation. So one very first question I had is, during the lap period, were we given credits for any of the low-income housing that we had put in play during that period of time?
Yes.
Do you remember how many there were?
We had the prior round obligation was 40 units. The township satisfied that 40 units and also had 4 credits that we moved over to the.
All right, so that's what we had
round.
doing, because that was actually be 5, 6, and 7 when I was there. So,
Right.
so roughly that we did it. What's about 40? Because the last one we did was the one across the street, right over here. It was the last one we did. Okay. So the other question I have then, where I'm a little confused on our ordinances right now is, if we're going to use your 40 that we have got credit for during the lap period, okay?
Well, that was for the 40 was for the prior round obligation, so that was round 2. What we call the gap period is when this time period where we've been in the state of flux for
Right,
a long
right.
time now.
Do we get any credit during that lap period?
Yes, you get credit for any units you constructed. The township at the time hadn't constructed any new credits, but we continued credits that we currently had that we were able to pull for.
I'm just trying to get a figure in my head how many credits we're getting right now. Like, is it 20 or 30?
Is it at 44?
We're getting 44 right now.
I thought, that's what I said. I think I said 40 originally. I said 40. That's what I said. So it's 44.
Well, we're getting 44 for the prior round. We can carry 4 of those forward.
Okay.
To apply to this.
All right.
That's how we're getting to the 84, I believe, to the gentleman's comments earlier, Mr. Vogel. I
All
think
right.
the math is 128 minus 44 takes us to 84 units that we had to accommodate.
So I have a couple of main, I guess you could say, concerns, okay? We put 2 ordinances together to address the low-income housing. But the judge isn't going to make the decision on the numbers until I think it's next week at Somerset County Courthouse. Am I correct?
Richie, we settled.
No, we already have the number.
We settled. We have our number. We settled with
Well,
fair
what's
share.
the court hearing next week, the 16th?
We already got approved by the court. We settled, and our settlement.
No, that's
was
not the
approved.
question. The question was, there's a court hearing at Somerset County Courthouse on the 16th for East Amwell.
No.
What's it about?
Yes, we have that's
been
what we call a compliance hearing. So
Okay. I know there's a court
But
hearing.
we're
I'm
not
going
for
to go.
approval. We've already been approved.
we've already been approved. So
Okay.
we did the settlement agreement earlier this year, and we've been in what we call a compliance period right
Right.
now, where we're preparing all of the ordinance to satisfy our settlement agreement.
All right, so he has revealed the total numbers. It's got to be more than 44.
No, Rich.
Or is that it?
Rich.
That is 44, is it?
No, Rich. 128 minus 44 leaves us with 84 units that we have to accommodate. We settled with affordable housing on the 84.
Okay.
That settlement went before the court and was approved by the court. So we're done.
Okay,
We're
so
done through 2025. We're done.
Up to 2025, correct?
We're done. We're done at 84. Our plan has been approved. Our overlay zoning
All
on the
right.
4 lots has been approved. We're done, other than these compliance hearings.
Well,
We're
so
done.
the
We're
court
done.
hearing is just preliminary, just to verify everything?
It may be there's another thing happening relative to
No, I saw the
setting
court
aside-
docket for Somerset County Courthouse. It's the 16th. It says
Right.
East Amwell.
Right, Rich, can I speak?
Oh, yeah.
There's another court docket right around that time for East Amwell, which has to do with old outstanding warrants, if we want to drop them. And I'm working with John Lanza.
No, it said.
Well, I'm just
for-
saying there's 2 that have come up. So I'm just making sure we're not confused.
Well, the one I read, I thought it was in the Huntington Democrat. Matter of fact, it said affordable housing.
Yes, and that'll be the one.
But he's saying-
But he's
There's
saying
a
there's also
different,
another
there's
one.
another one in Somerset.
So it was on the same docket?
No, it's a different day,
Okay.
but it's on
okay.
the same week.
All right, so then the only other thing is, I've mentioned to you a few times in the past, if you want to do some research on a new concept, it's called cottage zoning. You remember me mentioning that to you a couple times? Now, cottage zoning took hold actually on the West Coast. State of Washington was the first one to implement cottage zoning, all right? So it has taken that long. That was over 2 years ago, and I've been watching it, okay? And cottage zoning, actually, the company that's the head and the people is up in New England, Massachusetts. I forget his name, okay? But I guess you must know this, where I'm going to say next. Cottage zoning, sound familiar? Rocky Hill? Okay. I even mentioned that to Frank Banish a year ago, okay? So my concern right now with the way the ordinances are written, okay? We're due for the new master plan in 2020. Our main master plan mostly is high density. Now, for cottage zoning to work, would you say it would have to be low density to get it to work? And then my question after your answer is going to be, how did Rocky Hill get it to work? So cottage zoning is here. I have looked at the construction prints. I have looked at the outlay of cottage zoning. I think it's great. I really do. Small little homes, maximum square footage. They fit into the aesthetics of the town. Anyway, you want to build log cabins on a little group across the street? Okay. But they've been accepted by the government. So is cottage zoning based on low density master plan? What do you think? I asked that question to Frank. He didn't give me an answer either.
How do you do cottage zoning on septic?
Right, well, that's the difficulty that a lot of New Jersey municipalities.
This is a whole new concept. It started on the West Coast 2 years ago.
When you have public storage, that's one thing. You can put 10 cottages clustered together, no big deal. When you have septic, you can't put 10 cottages
Oh, no,
clustered together.
yes, it's all in there. The septic systems are in there, the builders, yes, it's all in there. You got to look at the drawings, you got to look at the specs, which I've done for 2 years. The thing is, too, that you have to understand is that my question being to her is, when you have a master plan based on high density, it probably won't work.
You're not high density.
Yes, you are. Our master plan is based on high density. Always was, always will be. You got 2 years to change it, 2020.
I'm confused.
Yeah, why don't we, Rich, why don't we do this?
You got 2 years to change it. 2020 is when this town has to change their master plan and get approved by the state of New Jersey. And at that point, what I'm saying is, if it's possible, now's the time to think about it. And now's the time, being that it's right next door. And I thought I saw there was some legal talk about people looking to try to turn it around and are against the cottage zoning. But I understand they did do it by ordinance? Yeah, they did it by ordinance. Yeah. Sorry to throw you a curveball, but I thought being that Frank does know about it, and I guess Frank sits in Rocky Hill more than you do. Am I correct?
No.
Rocky Hill's not his town. I know he used to sit Rocky Hill quite a bit.
About 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, but that's my question, and if that's the case, I don't know. Again, what you said before, I always say no sane builder's going to come up here in East Amwell and want to build, because you can't dynamite no more up here. Back then, when they were dynamiting and putting homes in, they were getting dynamite permits real easy, but you're not going to build up here. The builder's got to be. I mean, I've done subcontracting all the way up, and no, you're not going to do it.
Rich, I'll ask the planning board to take up a discussion on this cottage zoning in the future. Yes, sir.
I think my mathematical ability just improved. If you take a look at the numbers, it will resolve. First off, the prior round obligation for 40 units. If you look at the detail, it says that this includes one Women's Crisis Services Center group home. If you subtract that from 40, I think you get 39. Then if you take the 39 from the 128 that you're going to do in the third round, that's where the 89 comes from. Okay? That straightens the numbers out. So the Women's Crisis Service Center has been resolved.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, we're still discussing the ordinance. Does anyone else have a question specific to the ordinance that's been introduced?
Hi,
Yes.
Cindy Doe Priori, Manners Road. So what you're saying is that we had to make the property available, which it is. But when do you anticipate this happen? Or you're hoping, we're hoping it doesn't.
This is-
I'm hoping it doesn't.
The inclusionary zoning overlay just provides the opportunity if and when a developer decides to develop those properties. They may never come in and develop those properties, they may come in, but the
But then
onus is on the
township has to
developer.
decide- I mean, so a builder may want to come in, but then you get to say yea or nay. I mean, they have to go through a process.
Oh, yeah.
They would still have to come before the planning board, do site plan, and go through all the regular requirements for that.
And they would have to spend a small fortune to put in water and sewage, which probably makes doing it at this time uneconomical. But the opportunity is there if they wanted to do it. Should you lose any sleep over it at this point? I wouldn't.
Okay, good, because that's what I don't sleep well enough as it is. I don't want to lose Thank you. Thank you.
What I'd like to tell folks is the planning board, Mr. Don Riley, other members who've worked on this for years, have actually done a masterful job meeting these obligations in such a way that as a town will probably have no impact to us. So I think, we ended up in a great place.
Great.
Any other questions or comments on this ordinance? Okay, move to close. Oh, did you have one more, sir?
One more thing.
Okay.
Essentially, then, these plans are what I would call a what-if concept.
Yeah.
It's just getting arrangements in place and on the books if the developer does indeed want to come in and spend the money to develop these entities.
Right.
So you've now got a framework in which they could operate to accomplish that.
And it only limits them to those
With
properties.
control.
Right, right. So they can't go somewhere else to a nice big farm and do this. Yes.
If the property owners of the land that we've identified want to sell their land, do they have to sell it under the constrictions
Yeah.
of that zone?
It's a restriction of the deed.
Well,
Yes.
hang on, it's actually, it's an overlay zoning, which means you can build higher density on their parcels than you can on parcels that were not zoned for that higher density. So if they were to sell it, the next person simply steps into their shoes. The next person can continue to farm the land, never sell it, do whatever you want that's permissible generally under our zoning. But the next person, if it were a builder, could put in the sewage treatment facility and build high density.
But they couldn't build lower density.
Yes, they could.
So they can do anything still with that land?
Yes.
The
And then we
underlying
have to find new
agricultural zoning remains in place.
land. So then we have to find new land to meet our obligation.
Come 2025, I guess, right? Maybe, depending what the world's like in 2025. But if you want to buy one of those and build your personal estate and only have your personal estate on that parcel, you can do it. Assuming you otherwise satisfy the zoning with whatever you want to build.
Okay, could you just identify yourself?
Oh, hi, I'm Candy Wiggum, 1160 Old York Road.
Thank you.
Okay, I saw a question right behind Ken. Yes.
Like Michelle Gale at Manners Road. Could a builder come in and say build 200 homes, like 200 units? Or is it limited to the?
Well, there's a formula, right? Why don't you walk through that?
So the overlay zone works, by the state regulation, we have to give them 6 units per acre. How they engineer that site, based on the setbacks they need, where they're gonna put any wastewater or water facilities, they would have to engineer that site. So what the total number is at the end of the day is, we don't know. But we're providing an opportunity for 6 units per acre.
Okay, I'll go with the back and then we'll come to you.
I can do it from here, so I'll sell right at Cider Mill Road.
explain this to me. We have an obligation of 84 units. Yes? Am I right?
Yes.
By 2025. What happens if no builder comes in to do that? What happens to those, do we get punished for not?
No. No. As we said, we provide the opportunity for that to be met. It doesn't have to be met.
They're not called what I used to call them COA, whatever the new name is. Aren't they requiring us to build 84 units?
No. We met the requirements.
They're only obligated to provide the space for 84 units.
Yeah, we met all the requirements, and the authority is the judiciary, which has approved and blessed these requirements, this meeting of the requirements. So we're done.
So yes, there are monitoring periods. I think that's what you're referring to. There's always what we call monitoring periods. So every 2, 4, 6 years, we do have to provide an ongoing account of all of the existing and proposed affordable housing units within a municipality. So we do address our affordable housing in other ways. We do have a write-down, buy-down program that's still active, and we have units that way. We have group homes, and those are some of our units that we get. So the inclusionary zoning portion of that, again, we're providing the opportunity to build those affordable housing units within a market rate unit development. If in 2025, which is the end of this third round period, if we reassess at that time, and we'll get a new set of numbers at that time. I mean, these things don't go away. We went from round 1 to 2 to 3, and we'll go into round 4. We'll be writing a new plan at that point anyway. So we'll do that assessment, and do we want to look at different sites? Do we want to retain these sites? The township is under what we call a durational adjustment. That basically means we're a municipality that has no water or wastewater infrastructure, and we have nothing close to tie into. So any development that happens, a developer has to provide those services. That becomes a big economic, analysis that a developer has to do.
So that requirement that they have to provide the sewage and water is on them.
It's on them, yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I saw another question here, sir. Yes.
31 Wagner Road. Is the builder entitled to build 4 market rate units for each affordable unit?
Yes, they're required to do what we call a 15% set aside of all of their units have to be affordable units. If they're a rental development, if they're a for sale development, they're required to do 20% of their total units as affordable units. So there's a calculation they have to do.
So if a builder does decide that it's economical to do this, by the time that they cover the 84 affordable units, we'll have like over 400 total units. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Which is quite an impact on the township.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That's what's scary about the whole concept. You could wind up with close to 500 additional units if somebody wanted to max out. Now, the cost to put in water and storage for 500 units would be huge. And given that we don't have jobs here, we don't have public transportation, it's not even particularly easy to get into New York City. I don't really see somebody coming in and wanting to build 500 units. I don't know who would fill them, but yes, what you said is correct. In theory, you could wind up with close to 500 additional units, and that's what's scary about this.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, move we close?
Second?
Oh, I can't move.
Oh,
I'll move them.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Okay, now we're going to take action on this ordinance. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 1819?
I'll move we adopt 1819.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
I think we have to do a roll call.
Do a roll call? Yes.
Mr. Von Iverson?
Yes.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Mr. Osweiler?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes. Okay. Next is ordinance 1820, an ordinance establishing inclusionary affordable housing zones in the Amwell Valley Agricultural District, amending Chapter 92, Land Management, Article 7, zoning provisions to address East Amwell Township's third round affordable housing obligations. Do I have a motion to open to the public? Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
Notice from the Hunterdon County Democrat from September 20th, 2018. The ordinance is available to the public for introduction on September 13th. Also tell you that last night at the planning board, they passed the resolution to line.
Okay,
Move we open to the public then.
Second.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're now open to the public for any comments or questions regarding ordinance 18-20. Oh, yes.
Would you name the block and lots that you have identified as those 4 places?
Do we have them?
They're in the back of the
There's 4 block and lots that will be subject to the zoning overlay. They are block 1601 lot 26 and block 1601 lot 27. Those are the Thompson Realty properties who are the interveners in our declaratory judgment action. They are located on 202 and Dutch Lane. The other 2 properties are block 11 lot 3702 and block 11 lot 4. Those are on the western side of Ringo's. Those are Case, which is block 11 lot 4, and Scabelia, which is block 11 lot 3702.
So we have a map with all that on it. If you want a copy, just ask Terry and she can give you a copy with the map that shows each block.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Yes.
Just a quick question now. Bryce Thompson's property, I'm sure that's the one, property on Backbrook Road that was approved way back? Is that, because I didn't.
No.
No, it's on Dutch.
Where's it at?
Dutch Lane.
Between Dutch and
Okay.
Dutch
202.
and 202.
Yeah, Dutch Lane, I'm sorry, Dutch Lane on the bend.
Yeah.
That was approved a long time ago. So he still owns it. The builder would have to buy it from him.
Unless he wanted to do it himself.
Well,
Thompson
I was going to
Realty.
get to that. Knowing Bryce Thompson since I was a kid, I know exactly what he does. Yes, he can build it himself. Yes, he can. So if he builds it himself, then he can sell it himself.
Yes.
Okay.
I always wonder where that donation came, that anonymous donation. I'm still trying to figure out where it came from.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Move we close to the public.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So we're taking action on this ordinance. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 18-20?
I'll move we adopt 1820.
Second.
Okay, Terry?
On the roll call vote, Mr. Ron Robertson?
Yes.
Mr. Volk?
Yes.
Mr. Oster?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes. Okay, great. Yeah, thank you, Joanna, for being here. Appreciate it. Okay. Okay, item 12 on the agenda is special committee reports. There are none. Were there any added, Terry? Was there anything added? Okay. Unfinished business, item A, resolution in support of NJDOT municipal aid grant submission on October 5th, 2018 for Lindale Road. For those of you who attended our special meeting on the roads, we got an update from our DPW supervisor and engineer that the best option for a DOT grant was the portion of Lindale Road from where the new work was just completed down the hill toward Rocktown Road and finishing out up to Mountain. So that's the, there was a consensus agreement of the Township Committee to pursue that. So the engineer put together the grant request for that to the Department of Transportation, and we're going to adopt or approve a resolution in support of that tonight.
Yeah.
Right there in the ordinances.
Yeah, right. In the big ordinance.
Okay, yes, okay. Yeah, I did see the words Ridge Road. Yeah, we'll take that out, okay. So do I have a motion to adopt resolution untitled or unnumbered?
Yeah, I'll move the resolution for the Jersey Dot grant.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any more questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So hopefully we'll be successful and we'll get that grant. And I think he said we would know probably by the end of the year if that was favorable. Okay. Item B, West Amwell Township Shared Services Agreement for Police Services. And item C, we're going to discuss those in executive session. I'll just summarize for the residents what we're doing. We've been asked to review some amendments to those contracts. They're up for renewal, and West Amwell has put forward a proposal, so we're going to discuss that in executive session. Okay. Item D, the resolution to release the portion of the NJ Clean Energy Performance Bond for Phase 2 of the solar field that will not be developed, Block 3, Lot 1, and Lots 202. Action may be taken after executive. Again, we're going to discuss this in executive session and then take action possibly. Okay, appointment of a risk manager for insurance coverage. Again, I think we're going to discuss this. This is on our executive session. So we'll discuss that. New business, additional secretarial assistance in the clerk's office. And again, we're having a discussion, and the parties have been riced for that discussion in executive session. So now we're open to the public for any comments, either on the agenda or not. Does anyone have any comments? Yes.
So, I noticed that we don't have any minutes from the last meeting. Is that why you're going to have to discuss this in executive?
I finished many hours of them, but they went a long time, and I'd asked Pam to help me with them. She's not finished her portion yet, so. And then the other ones, Mr. Wolf hasn't reviewed them yet, so.
Yeah. Not just Mr. Wolf. I haven't reviewed them either. So there was, so the minutes, there was a little confusion on my part. I thought we were waiting for something, so I didn't bother to look at what was there until I was there, and then I realized I was wrong. So the minutes are now available for the Township Committee to review. We're going to review them and carry them till next meeting.
Okay. And my second comment is, this was a very, very different meeting than the September meeting. And it was nice to see the mayor run the meeting rather than the deputy mayor pontificate about everything he knows and belittle people. It's a very nice meeting tonight. But I'm still disappointed that no one else on the committee says anything about how these meetings have been running. Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments? Yes.
Yeah, a good question. I just brought it up real quick there for a minute. Being a tax lawyer, if I'm right, there's no statute of limitations on income tax fraud. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we could look back into certain things and see where the money's coming from and where it's going through the Treasury Department. They always say follow the money. If there's no statute of limitations on income tax fraud, if a person gets money from dark money and puts it in his pocket, doesn't that come under income tax fraud?
Look, you
Yeah,
use phrases
just-
that aren't defined terms like dark money. I can't answer that. And
Well, I'll take dark money out of it then. I'll take
Okay,
dark money. Because
I-
there's a lot of talk right now about dark money, okay? We've had a situation in labor that started 25, 30 years ago, PAC, P-A-C, PAC. That's what you know about PAC. And a lot of the union members would not contribute to PAC. And to this day, a lot of the labor guys will not contribute to PAC. And now PAC's coming to the forefront because it's been a lot of money coming from PAC, because it's the one place you can't trace a political contribution. That's why they call it dark money. See? But going back to Richard, we'll take dark out of there. But if that's, my point is simple. If you have anybody making money and putting it in their pocket, they're not paying income tax. Isn't that income tax fraud?
Well, quite often it is, but
All right,
fraud is
I'm just one
complicated,
simple
but
answer.
quite often it is.
And there is no statute of limitations.
There's
on
no
it.
statute of
Thank you.
limitations.
Okay. Any other comments from the public?
Move to close to the public?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're closed to the public. So just for the public's information, we're going to have a fairly long executive session. We have several topics. So we welcome you back, but it may be a little longer than normal. So you're duly noted and warned.
I'll be right back to
Yeah. Please do.
Just, I didn't want to.
Yes, we do. Go.